Silver and Dernick watched Kalen with strained expressions, the weight of 20-odd disciples behind them amounting to barely 20 points between the lot. No match for him at all, the others hadn't thought that far ahead. After a long moment, Kalen exhaled and turned to them, voice level. "How about this? I'll go with you for now." Both men released the breath they'd been holding. At least he wasn't killing them. "Fine," Silvar said. Dernick said nothing. "Lead on, I'll follow." Kalen nodded. He intended to stay with them a few days, learn the realm's layout. Over 5,000 people had entered, meaning over 5,000 winning points up for grabs. No need to exhaust himself early, someone else would reap the benefit. Better to familiarize himself with this unfamiliar place first. With Kalen among them, the group's presence sharpened. They waited another half day at the pre-arranged meeting point. Everyone had agreed to gather within that window before entering the realm. After that, stragglers were on their own. The secret realm unfolded like a small world. Kalen followed Silvar, Dernick, and the others for dozens of miles until a crystal-clear lake appeared ahead. "There's water, let's fill up," Silvar said. No one objected. They descended to the shore and rushed the bank. The lake mirrored the surroundings, a gentle breeze carrying cool dampness. Silvar, Dernick, Irindor, and several others reached the edge first, some stepping into the shallows. Kalen, hanging back at the rear, suddenly frowned. "Careful." Everyone who had rushed the water froze. In that instant, dozens of silver lights erupted from the lake, throwing knives. "Ambush, watch out!" Silvar roared. The attack caught them flat-footed. Blades found flesh immediately. Silvar took a cut to the arm. Dernick, farther back, dodged in time. The rest weren't so lucky. Most collapsed, injured. "Damn it, what's happening?" Someone cried. "Enemies, there are enemies here!" Another shouted. How could someone hide in the water? 3 young men in blue robes rose from the lake, each radiating the unmistakable pressure of the Tengara realm. One sneered, wiping water from his face. "Didn't expect you to notice. Wanted to wipe you all out in one go, but a few slipped through." The other 2 sneered, scanning Silvar's group. "Hand over your tokens or crush them and leave." Mordain, Boren, Calvin, Silvar, and Dernick's faces went ashen. The rest mirrored them. These 3 were famous outer sect figures, all first-level Tengara. In the outer sect, anyone reaching Tengara was a celebrity. Silvar and Dernick led the team, but aside from them and Kalen, everyone was injured and combat ineffective. 3 Tengara experts? No way to fight that. Kalen stayed calm, though inwardly shaken. He hadn't expected an underwater ambush. Restrictions here blocked secret techniques and artifacts, but realm suppression still applied. Even Trasinor realm cultivators couldn't detect Starfall transformation realm practitioners who deliberately concealed their killing intent. He'd only sensed it because of his distance. He'd caught that flash of murderous intent a split second before the strike. A Tengara youth scanned them with a cold smile, like a predator admiring prey. His gaze landed on Kalen, white robe, one empty sleeve, and paused. "Kalen," one exclaimed. The other 2 followed his look and chimed in unison. "It really is him. 9th level Starfall transformation realm. This year's strongest outer disciple. Wonder what trick he used to beat Stuart Everhart. Never expected to run into him here." Their tones turned solemn. Kalen said nothing, eyeing the 3. Judging by their auras, they'd only recently broken into Tengara, all first level. Kalen's down an arm now, combat power's gotta be way down, even if he matches Tengara, so what? "The 3 of us afraid of him." One expert spoke, the other 2 nodded. Clearly they weren't letting him walk away. As for Silvar, Dernick, and the dozen injured, they didn't register as threats. Each minor realm brought a massive strength gap, let alone the chasm between Seraphis and Starfall transformation realm. The lightly injured, Silvar and Dernick included, fell back with grim faces. They knew they couldn't touch 3 Tengara experts. Only a few dozen Tengara cultivators had entered this inner disciple assessment. By strength alone, these 3 were inner sect material. "Damn it, didn't expect a group this strong," Silvar muttered. "What do we do?" Dernick asked, face dark. "Looks like they've set their sights on Kalen." The meaning was clear enough, whether to intervene in Kalen's case, or let him serve as bait to draw the other group away so the rest could escape. The real question was whether to run at all. The 2 were close friends. Before the selection, they had even agreed that if danger arose, they would abandon their other allies and flee. That was simply how the cultivation world worked. One of them cursed under his breath. Let's see how things go. Darius might not necessarily lose. And us? One problem at a time. A heavy silence settled between them. Finally, Silvar and Dernick resolved to occupy a Tengara realm expert, creating an opening for their friend. The main reason they stayed was Kalen himself, terrifyingly strong, utterly ruthless. If he survived and came to settle scores, the consequences would be unimaginable. Two half-step Seraphis realm experts fighting a true Seraphis realm cultivator might not win, but they could buy time. As for the other injured companions, that was merely wishful thinking. At that moment the three opponents moved, each producing a magical weapon, and attacked. Kalen did not hurry. He watched them approach with calm eyes. "Kalen, the two of us will hold one off for you," Silvar gritted out. Dernick wore the same grim expression. Whether they survived this battle depended on him. Just as the pair prepared to fight with everything they had, a calm voice cut through the tension. "No need, I can do it myself. It's just 3 stinky fish." The 3 young men opposite, all at the Tengara realm, were instantly enraged. 3 Tengara cultivators underestimated by a 1-armed Starfall transformation 9th level. Yet none dared true carelessness. His reputation in the outer sect was too great. The trio immediately unleashed their strongest techniques. Silvar and Dernick were astonished. The aura their opponents displayed was overwhelming. They were certain now that even together, they could only stall one of them briefly. But when they looked at Kalen, he remained unruffled, seemingly not taking the fight seriously at all. To Arindor and the dozen other injured outer sect disciples, the 3 enemies moved like ghosts, speed beyond what their eyes could track, the speed of Seraphis realm cultivators. Everyone wiped cold sweat for the 1-armed youth. In a few breaths, the 3 surrounded him from different angles, cutting off escape, preparing a joint strike. Then a mocking smile curved Kalen's lips with a pat. The Solare Hastael appeared in his hand, badly damaged, looking as though it might shatter at any moment. "Go to hell," one shouted. One held a knife, one a sword, the other a staff gripped in both hands. They struck simultaneously at the figure in the center. Kalen had only the Solare Hastael, which could at most parry 2 attackers, impossible to stop a third. Even 3 first-level Tengara cultivators working together could easily defeat a second-level cultivator. Even a 3rd-level Seraphis realm expert would have a fighting chance. But Kalen moved. Instead of attacking, he slammed the Solare Hastael down onto the ground. A thunderous crash rang out. The weapon collided with the earth, producing a violent explosion. Centered on him, the ground cracked inch by inch, emitting a powerful tremor. Clods of dirt scattered, a grey mist rose. The 3 were shocked. The power displayed was astonishing, shaming them by comparison. The tremor shook the ground beneath their feet, nearly unbalancing them. Such a strike would be devastating against a combined attack from Starfall transformation cultivators. But all 3 were Tengara realm. They could fly. In an instant, the trio left the violently shaking ground and took to the air. Startled, they attacked again without hesitation, intending to use their most ruthless methods to kill him. That all 3 were so young yet had reached the Tengara realm spoke to exceptional talent. Kalen smiled, unsurprised. Those who reached the Tengara realm were never easy prey. A sharp whistle cut the air as he used the Solare Hastael as a spear and hurled it at the man directly ahead. The man was shocked, never expecting his opponent to discard his weapon at this moment. Was he asking for death? Did he think a thrown spear could fell a Traseno realm expert? Impossible. Even Kalen knew a single thrown Solare Hastael could not take one down. His aim was simply to stall the young man for a moment. The Solare Hastael was a low-grade Ashen-level magical weapon, projected from his cultivation. Its power was terrifying. Though the youth possessed Tengara realm strength, he dared not be careless and hurriedly dodged, blocking with his long sword. Meanwhile, the other 2 had already reached Kalen. He patted his storage bag and a magical sword appeared in his hand. With only one arm, he could not wield the Solare Hastael and a longsword simultaneously. Now armed with the sword, Kalen leaped up and slashed at the young man before him in midair. The man held a long, jet-black sword whose imposing presence marked it at least an Ashen-level weapon. A heavy clang rang out as the 2 longswords clashed. Kalen's strength was clearly greater, forcing the Tengara cultivator back several meters. His figure paused in midair, blades locked. The young man sneered. So what if he was stronger? As long as he committed his sword to block, he could not defend against the attack from behind. Kalen would have nowhere to defend, nowhere to retreat. The last young man, attacking from behind, had clearly seen the same opening. He held a massive niobium gold staff, bringing it down with ferocious force toward the back of Kaelin's head. His eyes were cold and sharp. Silvar and Dernick were shocked and moved to help, but it was too late. All of this had unfolded in mere breaths. Erindor and the injured disciples stood stunned. The three young men from the Tengara realm wore identical cold smiles. Certain Kaelin could not withstand the assault. One screamed for his death. The niobium gold club descended toward his skull with killing intent. Even if the blow failed to kill, it would cripple. Just as every spectator expected bone to shatter, Kaelin vanished like a ghost. The club wielder cried out in shock. His target had disappeared, yet momentum carried the strike forward. The swordsman, thrown off balance by Kaelin's sudden absence, lurched directly beneath the crashing weapon. No one could have predicted such a chain of events unfolding in a single breath. The club wielder tried to arrest his strength, but it was too late. A sickening thud rang out. The swordsman absorbed the full force on his crown, the sound wet and final as a melon splitting. Unprepared and defenseless, he collapsed, consciousness fleeing. The club wielder roared Mordain's name. Meanwhile, the third young man, the one who had dodged the solary Astral, stared in astonishment. In those few heartbeats, Kaelin reappeared behind the club wielder, as if by sorcery. The man cried out, but realization came too late. Gladius light flashed, 2 strikes severed both arms at the shoulders. The niobium gold club clattered to the ground, hand still clenched around its haft. Screams tore the air. In an instant, 2 first-level Trascenal realm cultivators were eliminated. Only the swordsman who had blocked the solary Hastael remained. Darius cursed, face draining of color, retreating 2 steps. He had planned to assist, but looking up, he saw his companions destroyed, one unconscious with a shattered skull, the other armless and howling. Both combat ineffective. You're the only one left. Come on, Kaelin said calmly, longsword in hand. Silvar, Dernick, and the others stood stunned. Was the Tengara realm truly this fragile? A 9th-level Starfall Transformation Realm cultivator had instantly killed 2 Trascenal realm experts unscathed. They questioned the very hierarchy of their world. Silence fell. Not just them. Outer disciples, menial disciples, even elders watched in amazement. The number of active light screens outside had dropped by hundreds, attention concentrated on the secret realm's strongest battles. Most had been fixed on Kaelin's fight. Renowned as he was, facing 3 Tengara realm experts drew eyes. Though dialogue was inaudible, every movement was visible. This Kaelin is really 9th-level Starfall Transformation Realm, impossible, one disciple muttered. I'd believe 3rd-level Seraphis Realm. Fighting a 1st-level Seraphis Realm cultivator would be like slaughtering a dog, another replied. Darius defeated Mordain and Boran just like that, and Calvin fled. Too powerful. The discussions continued. Most had heard rumors of Kaelin defeating Stuart Everhart at the 2nd level of Tengara realm, but hearsay differed vastly from witnessing it firsthand. Seraphina smiled radiantly beside Boran, her gaze never leaving Kaelin. Inside the secret realm, the last young man's expression was utterly grim. The Kaelin before him was nowhere near 9th-stage Starfall Transformation realm. Even 3rd or 4th level Seraphis realm seemed plausible. Terrifying, that instantaneous attack, that ghostly movement. Darius glanced at his ruined companions, destined to lose their inner sect qualifications, then at Kaelin. Without a word he turned and fled, taking to the air. They ran. Kaelin was speechless. But he had no interest in pursuit. He could not fly, and the man's escape changed little. Darius turned to the other 2, one unconscious with a shattered skull, the other screaming, armless. After a moment, Kaelin looked at Silvar and Dernick. In this selection, we can seize and crush jade tokens. Are there any other rules against it? The 2 snapped back to reality. Silvar hesitated, then admitted there was no such rule. Dernick added hurriedly, though stealing isn't forbidden, the light screens outside broadcast everything to the Zereth Immortal sect leader and elders. Generally, no one dares. Kaelin nodded. Darius already knew the selection rules and the surveillance. Killing was not a crime within the secret realm, precisely why few did it openly. But Kaelin had a different idea now. Kaelin turned his gaze to the storage bags of the 2 Tengara realm cultivators. Without a word, he snatched them away, probing with his divine sense. A look of joy crossed his face. He withdrew their jade tokens from the bags. Crushing them would eliminate the pair. The young man whose skull had been smashed lay unresponsive, already unconscious. The other, armless, stared at Kalen with a grim expression. "You can crush the jade token. We admit defeat. Give me back my storage bag." "Storage bag?" Kalen's face was all smiles. "Where is your storage bag? These are all my spoils." "You." The armless youth tried to speak further, but Kalen had already crushed both jade tablets. The two figures were enveloped in bright light and vanished in a flash. Those around them exchanged bewildered glances, thinking him too ruthless. He had directly seized the storage bags despite the Zareth immortal sect leader and elders watching from outside. Silvar and Dernick both swallowed hard. The scene felt strangely familiar. Afterward, Kalen's own jade tablet reacted. He took it out and found a row of numbers on its surface. "Did these two already rob 11 people? And now it's all been added to my list," he murmured, feeling it was about right. With Tengara realm's strength lying in ambush here, killing more than 10 people was normal. "Where is the stick?" His expression darkened. The armless young man had been teleported away along with his shattered jade token, the magical staff in his hand gone as well. However, the jet-black longsword remained. Kalen sighed, then felt relieved. A Brindor longsword was good enough. He glanced it over, put it away, then retrieved the Solaray Astral from a distance. The two storage bags were already packed away. Kalen sighed again. Losing his left arm had a huge impact on his strength. If the gap between sides was overwhelming, fine, but if strengths were similar, he would suffer greatly. Otherwise, he would not have needed Shadow Shift to deal with those 3 first-level Tengara Realm cultivators. Outside, the 2 Tengara Realm cultivators were teleported to an open space beyond the Zareth Immortal Sect. All Inner Sect selection participants arrived here upon having their jade tokens crushed. Eldamir, the Outer Sect steward, immediately led people to check their injuries. Whether shattered skull or severed arms, the injuries were severe. However, Tengara Realm cultivators differed from Body or Indal Realm and Starfall Transformation Realm practitioners. They could regenerate limbs. Given time, the armless youth would grow them back. A short while later, the skull-smashed youth revived. His name was Mordain. Disqualification did not surprise him, but upon waking, he discovered his storage bag was missing. The armless youth beside him, Boran, wore a livid face. Clutching his head, Mordain asked, "We have all lost?" Boran remained silent. "Where is the storage bag?" "I got robbed." "What?" Silence followed. Outside the main hall, quite a few disciples had witnessed Kalen skillfully snatching the storage bags. They wore strange expressions, thinking him too ruthless. Did he not know the Zareth Immortal Sect leader and elders were watching? How dare he rob so openly? Does Kalen not know there is a light barrier outside? I think it's possible. Holy crap. He just robbed 2 Trasinor Realm cultivators of their storage bags. If everyone he encounters afterward steals his storage bag after defeating him, how much will he ultimately steal? The 2 sect leaders, Lorcan and Coldrick, along with inner sect elders, Shirith, Cedric, Aldrich and Boran, and outer sect elders Darius, Sorrel, Lyriel, and others who knew Kalen possessed the Enlightenment seed wore strange expressions, their thoughts unreadable. The elders, unaware of his identity, began to speak up. "Who is this kid? He's so strong, yet he actually dared to openly snatch a storage bag during the inner sect selection. This kid was too ruthless, severing both arms. He's too bloodthirsty. Judging by his appearance, he's probably done his fair share of murder and robbery in the past." Inside the secret realm, Kalen naturally knew those outside could see everything clearly. But he did not care. The rules did not forbid stealing storage bags, only jade tokens mattered. Even if they disallowed it, he could just return them after leaving. If they did not care, would he not make his fortune? Kalen was quite satisfied with the haul, nearly 2,000 spirit stones and a pile of miscellaneous materials. He had not had time to check the contribution points on the other disciple's jade tablet, but guessed it was substantial. He planned to steal a few more later and check them all together outside. He was in no hurry, nowhere to spend money in the secret realm, and he was not truly interested in spirit stones. However, the feeling of grabbing storage bags seemed addictive. With the astral chart of Evernight, he had no shortage of cultivation resources and rarely used the spirit stones he stole. Yet ever since robbing the Luminar Patriarch and a group of Luminar family elders, he felt himself becoming somewhat addicted to snatching storage bags. Darius muttered to himself, tallying the deficits. The Astravi Pilvora still lacked its final main ingredient. And he needed more heart-binding leather and ethereal Lyrandel dried pyrith besides. A single failed refinement would wipe him out. The arithmetic was brutal, he was very poor. The logic settled into something like comfort. He had found a perfectly good reason to be miserable. Behind him, the other injured disciples had struggled to their feet. Only Silvar and Dernick remained where they had fallen. The rest approached with the dazed gait of people who had witnessed the impossible, a Tengara realm disciple lying in wait underwater. Without Darius, the lot of them would have lost their teleportation rights already. Kalen, what do we do next? Silvar and Dernick stepped forward, their eyes strange with a mixture of awe and wariness. One man had dispatched 2 outer disciples at the first level of the Seraphis realm and frightened off a third. That kind of strength did not belong to someone challenging above their weight. It rewrote the rules of the engagement. What's next? Darius turned the question over, then frowned. Wasn't I following you? Why are you asking me? Silvar went quiet. Dernick did the same. They had no answer. Darius was the gravity in the room now, and neither of them knew the way forward. Our original plan was to comb the perimeter for isolated disciples and take their tokens, Silvar said, his expression tight. It didn't work out that way. They had not found a single lone target. Instead, they had nearly been annihilated. Without Darius, Silvar and Dernick would have died alongside the rest against 3 Seraphis realm experts. Darius nodded, scanning the walking wounded. Injuries ranged from minor to debilitating. Several could barely move. Let's find a place to rest. With this many hurt, we're not going anywhere. No one objected. It had been the plan all along. In Darius's view, the past few days had been wasted. Better to wait until the final stretch and intercept the survivors after they had done the heavy lifting. But the more he considered it, the more the strategy soured. Once the scramble ended, everyone would care only about points and tokens. Storage bags would be ignored or feared. With over 5,000 outer disciples in the realm, each from a wealthy family, those bags represented a fortune he could not afford to miss. He could not sit and wait to die. The group reached a deserted clearing in the dense forest. The injured swallowed pills and settled into meditation. Darius approached Silvar and Dernick. I'm leaving, Kalen. You're leaving? Stunned silence rippled through the clearing. If he went, their anchor vanished. A single powerful enemy would wipe them out. Darius looked at each face in turn. Given your condition, you can't travel or fight. Stay here, hide for 7 days. When the trial ends and scores are tallied, if more than 100 have been eliminated, you might still qualify. Your job is to survive. Mine is to thin the herd. The disciples cycled through despair, disbelief, and a rising desperate hope. Brother Kalen, is that true? You wouldn't lie to us? Do we really have a chance? Eyes fixed on him, injured disciples, Silvar, Dernick, all burning with the same need to believe. If you survive 7 days, Darius said, you still have a chance. Gratitude erupted, thanks and blessings poured over him. They were convinced he was sacrificing himself to cull the competition for their sake. After all, they could barely move. What else could he be doing? Darius said nothing. The truth was simpler. He needed an excuse to leave so he could hunt storage bags. The strongest outer disciple here was Tengara realm. Even with one arm, he feared none of them. There was another truth he had not yet admitted to himself. When he had defeated Torin but spared him, when he had walked away from old grudges, something in him had shifted. The old Darius would never have invented a noble lie to cover his departure. He would have simply gone. Growing up in the Korath family, Kalen never knew the love of kin. The absence carved a deep inferiority into him from childhood. When Torin beat him unconscious and shipped him off to the Veilers as a live-in son-in-law, he hit bottom. The future looked like nothing but uncertainty and despair. He considered suicide, ending it all because only suffering waited. Then he accidentally activated the astral chart of Evernight, and the second chance it gave him became the reason he cultivated, the reason he never relaxed a single day, even after Torin left Iron Peak City. What followed, his life with the Veilers, let him taste genuine family affection for the first time. When he finally defeated Torin and laid bare the emotions he had suppressed for years before Roderick and Seraphine, something in him sublimated. He had rarely trusted anyone, rarely smiled. Now, having left Iron Peak again, he did not even realize how often his lips curved upward. After saying goodbye to Silvar, Dernick, and the others, he departed alone, exactly as planned. Darius had even considered robbing them, a fleeting, unethical impulse. They had been allies, yet he had poisoned them. Besides, the dozen of them likely carried nothing of value. Darius moved swiftly now, his pace far exceeding the group travel with Silvar and Dernick. "Kill everyone you encounter after that," he muttered, seeing a golden opportunity. Not far ahead, two figures hurried along, a man and a woman. The man's cultivation sat at great perfection of the Starfall transformation realm, the woman's at the 8th level. "Zephyra, hurry up. At this pace we'll need another hour," the man urged. "Brother Lang, this is already my fastest speed," she replied. They were clearly close, allied with others outside and rushing to a rendezvous. A sharp sound split the air, as a figure suddenly blocked their path. They halted, frowning at the white-robed, one-armed man drawing a long knife. "Who are you to dare block my way?" the man roared. Darius had just sensed the stranger's cultivation at the 9th level of Starfall transformation, lower than his own. So he felt bold, but when he saw the face clearly, he froze. His pupils contracted. "It's Kaelin!" Zephyra, behind him, had obviously heard the name as well. She turned pale and stepped back. "You recognize me?" Kaelin was speechless. When had he become so famous? Darius did not know his name was now widely known in the outer sect, though few had actually seen him. His high-profile appearance in the inner sect selection, especially with only his right arm remaining, was truly eye-catching. What do you want?" the man exclaimed, sidestepping the question. Even though his cultivation was higher, he had no intention of fighting. "Let me tell you, I'm allied with Senior Brother Baldric. His cultivation is at the 1st level of the Tengara realm. You must not touch me." Darius thought invoking that name might intimidate the other party. Instead, Kaelin's eyes lit up. "Where did you agree to meet?" "This," the man was confused, unsure of the intent. "Why are you asking about the meeting point? What are you up to?" Darius was not stupid. He could not reveal the location. "You don't have a choice. Here's the deal. Tell me, and I'll let you both go. Otherwise you're eliminated right now," Kaelin said calmly. "You're threatening me." The man spoke toughly, but his body unconsciously retreated another step. Zephyra was completely dumbfounded. At the 8th level of Starfall transformation, facing a notorious outer sect figure, panic was only natural. "Yes, I'm threatening you." "So what?" Kaelin replied evenly. The man roared, his aura surging as if ready for a fight to the death. Kaelin nodded to himself. This guy still had some backbone. Even the woman beside him drew a long sword, her whole body radiating murderous intent, apparently intending to stand with her lover and fight to the end. The disciples and elders watching the light screen outside thought so too. "This Kaelin is quite a man," an outer disciple exclaimed. "I admire him for still having the courage to fight the ruthless Kaelin." Countless disciples began to admire Kaelin. He dared to fight even knowing he was no match, and that deserved respect. The next moment, however, the man suddenly turned and fled at incredible speed. Darius was speechless. Zephyra stood stunned. He ran away? She was still here. The man poured every ounce of strength into his flight, not once looking back. Darius had covered less than 10 breaths' distance when Kaelin's figure abruptly appeared in front of him. "You're not a real man," Kaelin said, disgusted. The kid was too spineless, abandoning the woman and running. The man looked utterly astonished. He did not know when his pursuer had arrived. Before he could react, a punch knocked him unconscious. "My storage bag was stolen." The battle was over. Darius stood over Kaelin's crumpled form, the fight drained out of him in a single breath. All that posturing, the bluster of a chase, it had been nothing but theater. Kaelin's eyes had rolled back, consciousness severed by a blow he hadn't the constitution to withstand. Yet even unconscious, instinct drove his fingers to his storage bag. He found the token, crushed it, and vanished in a pillar of light before Darius could decide whether to finish what he'd started. Darius exhaled, the tension leaving his shoulders. He blinked across the distance between heartbeats, materializing before the woman frozen at the clearing's edge. She still clutched her longsword, knuckles white, her face carved from heartbreak. The 8th level of Starfall transformation meant nothing against the simple shock of abandonment. Her Taoist partner had just traded her life for his own. She gasped when he appeared. "You." 2 staggering steps backward, she nearly fell. Darius frowned. Was he truly that terrifying? He hadn't moved to strike outside the secret realm. The viewing platforms curdled with contempt. Disciples and elders alike wore matching expressions of disgust. A coward who abandons his partner. The words circulated like poison. Heartless, ruthless, No man is any good. Even the elders nodded in grim agreement. A child who would flee alone, leaving his Taoist partner to die, such a one lacked the fundamental character of a cultivator. None of them knew that Kalen, still unconscious in his flight, would one day become a notorious figure in the outer sect. Infamy, as it turned out, was its own kind of fame. Inside the realm, Darius studied the woman with unhurried attention. She was striking, slender, delicate features, a high nose bridge, beautiful by any ordinary measure, though she fell short of Isolde's impossible standard. "Your name," he said. Wariness flickered across her face, then settled into something like resignation when he made no move to attack. "Lyriel? Lyriel?" He rolled the name over his tongue, stroking his chin. "I said I'd let you go if you told me your meeting point, did you hear me?" She blinked. "You're serious, deadly." He had no taste for cutting down a woman half his cultivation, no matter the realm's rules. "Tell me where you're meant to meet Baldric and you walk away." She hesitated. "If I betray senior brother Baldric, he'll never let me live." "Baldric Renar? The one Kalen mentioned?" She nodded. Darius considered. "Tell me his location. I'll say Kalen gave it up under pressure. Your name never comes up." Her eyes sharpened, calculating. "And you swear this? Why would I lie to you?" She weighed it, then exhaled. "West, a desert. We agreed to meet there." She described the coordinates with careful precision. Darius listened, memorizing, a slow satisfaction spreading across his face. "Good. Your secret's safe with me." He turned to leave. "Wait." He paused, glancing back. Could you take me with you?" Darius stared. "You want to follow me?" She nodded, desperation and something harder beneath it. "Alone, I'm dead. With you, I have a chance. I won't slow you down. If trouble finds us, don't worry about me. Just go." Her sincerity was a blade's edge. He saw the calculation behind it. If he won against Baldric, she'd ride his coattails. If he lost, she'd surrender to Baldric's faction and claim she'd been captured. Clever, ruthless. Exactly the sort of survivor who lasted in these realms. Darius sighed, the sound heavy with resignation. "Fine, stay close." Darius didn't care about the extra tail. Inside the secret realm, he feared no one. "Then come with me for now," he sighed, turning west. Lyriel followed without protest. Outside, the spectators were stunned. They could see the screen but not hear the conversation, and the situation had inverted too fast to process. Moments ago, Darius had been planning to rob a couple. In the next breath, he'd knocked the man unconscious, stripped him, and sent the woman fleeing. What kind of mess was this? In the crowd, Seraphina's smile froze. Her brother-in-law had run off with a pretty female disciple. She cursed the woman as a vixen, grinding her teeth with the urge to bite him. Unaware, Darius and Lyriel continued west. Along the way, he asked the name of the man he'd robbed. Kalen, since they'd be shifting blame later, it helped to know the name first. At a normal pace, the journey would take an hour, but Lyriel's speed frustrated him. "There's no danger around," he said, not breaking stride. "I'll go on ahead so you don't have to come with me. Keep walking west. I'll wait for you up ahead." She considered it and nodded. Showing her face beside him would complicate too many things. Darius accelerated, his speed multiplying until he vanished from her sight in an instant. She was utterly astonished. She'd only heard of his strength, hadn't even seen him kill Kalen, and just witnessing this movement was enough. He was probably faster than a first-level Tengara realm expert. She secretly sped up and kept walking west. Beyond the dense forest lay a scorching desert of rolling yellow sand, the sun blazing overhead. The hidden realms spanned thousands of miles with varied climates, forests, water bodies, deserts. Atop a high dune stood Baldric, hands clasped behind his back, flanked by more than a dozen blue-robed outer disciples at the 8th and 9th levels of Starfall transformation, allies he'd recruited. "Senior Brother Baldric, when do we set off?" A disciple half a step into the Seraphis realm asked, face full of respect. "If the rest don't arrive in another half hour, we leave." Baldric's voice carried arrogance. The disciple nodded and withdrew. Once inside, following a powerful Tengara realm expert and surviving 7 days gave them a high chance of becoming inner disciples based on scores. Baldric, at the first level of Tengara, was a top-tier expert among the outer sect. Darius wore an arrogant expression, eyes fixed on the distance. A moment later, a blurry figure materialized in the east, closing fast. "Brother Baldric, someone's coming from the east. Looks like our companions." The half-step Heaven Realm disciple returned, beaming. Baldric nodded. "Good. Follow me and you'll have no problem getting through these 7 days." The disciple offered more flattery before turning away. This was their prearranged meeting point. Anyone heading straight here was likely looking for them. But as the dark dot drew closer, expressions shifted. "Senior Brother Baldric, that person seems to be wearing a white robe." In the open desert, visibility was unlimited, and starfall transformation experts could see even farther. At a distance, it had been just a rapidly moving point of light. Now they could tell it wasn't a blue outer disciple robe. Only one person had entered the assessment in white. Kalen. Baldric's eyes narrowed, arrogance vanishing, brow furrowing. The light moved extremely fast. Arrival was imminent. Darius cursed it was him. Those in the Tengara realm naturally saw farther than those in the verdant vale. "Kalen," the surrounding disciples murmured, greatly surprised, the nemesis. "Don't panic. See what he's up to. If he's coming for us, kill him too." Baldric exhaled, relief smoothing his features. He possessed the strength of the first major perfection of the Tengara realm. Even if the rumors were fierce, the boy was only at the 9th level of starfall transformation. Hearing this, everyone turned their gazes to the half-step Heaven Realm disciple. That was right, why panic? Their senior brother, a first-level Tengara expert, was here. What was there to fear? A moment later, Kalen arrived. The group stood coldly watching. Baldric didn't speak, but the disciple behind him stepped forward. "Kalen, what brings you here?" "I'm here to rob you," Kalen said, his expression flat, as if stating the weather. "Hand over your storage bags and I won't have to take them myself." A disciple cursed, another shouted arrogance. A third called it outrageous. Then silence fell, heavy and stunned. The dozen-odd disciples glared, teeth gritted. Baldric, standing behind them, darkened. The young man beside him, a half-step Seraphis cultivator, stepped forward, furious, demanding to know how Kalen dared cause trouble for senior brother Baldric's team. Baldric's chin lifted, arrogance returning. Then Kalen laughed, loud and sharp, and declared he had come to take Baldric down. The disciples cried out. More than a dozen froze, even Baldric stared. He had never met Kalen, never offended him. The half-step expert roared for a joint attack. Weapons sang from scabbards. Baldric pointed out Kalen's missing arm, urging them to swarm. He was curious, yes, but certain this was about him. Rumor said Kalen had beaten Steward Everhart, a second-level Seraphis cultivator, but so what? One arm, numbers. They would not fear him. They charged, a ring of blue robes closing from every side. Kalen didn't move. His right hand tapped his storage bag. A towering black longsword materialized in his grip, stolen from the man whose head he had split, though he had never learned the name. A finer weapon than the one he had taken from Gavrik, at least. The moment the hilt settled, his aura spiked. He moved like a ghost, crashing into the formation. Baldric produced an Aurimus hammer, mid-grade ashen level, heavy enough to shatter stone. He held back, waiting for a fatal opening. The disciples attacked with the confidence of numbers. 1 breath. 1 body hit the ground. 3 breaths. 3 fallen. 20 breaths. Every blue-robed disciple lay wailing, unable to rise. Not one withstood a single exchange. "How can he be this strong?" someone gasped. Only Baldric remained untouched. He had expected flaws. 10+ disciples at the 8th and 9th levels of Starfall transformation should have created gaps. None appeared. The group was simply erased. "Your turn?" Kalen said, calm, eyes on Baldric. Baldric's face went ashen. The fallen disciples could only watch. "Kalen, die." Baldric's aura surged. He charged, each step shaking the ground, the Aurimus hammer a blur of killing weight. He leapt, bringing it down in an arc that twisted the air itself. The watching disciples paled, elders and outer sect observers turned their attention to the clash. Baldric's strength ranked among the outer sect's best. Kalen did not dodge. Teleportation would have been easier, cleaner, but he refused to keep revealing that card. His grip tightened on the black longsword. Spiritual power flooded the blade until the steel drank the light, ink black against the sun. He swung upward. The impact thundered across the plateau. Baldric staggered back, blood spraying, flung like a severed kite. He crashed 20 meters away, motionless, combat ability gone. Blood spurted. Baldric stared at Kaelin in disbelief. Kaelin exhaled, lowering the sword to examine its edge. He had underestimated the weapon. He walked to Baldric, took the storage bag, pried the Oramis hammer from limp fingers. The remaining disciples received the same treatment, fluid, seamless, without hesitation. Kaelin now held more than 10 tokens. The onlookers' faces were grim. "Sorry," Kaelin said, helpless, "inner sect selection assessment." The other side practically choked on rage. Taking tokens was the assessment. Taking storage bags was robbery. The surrounding disciples seethed. Even Baldric stepped forward, voice sharp. "Kaelin, give me back my storage pouch and the golden hammer." Kaelin glanced around, calm. "I heard you get away with murder here." Silence fell. The threat hung plain. If he killed them, their deaths would be meaningless. Yet the words only deepened the resentment. A cultivator's life rode in their storage pouch. Stripped of it, they had nothing. Survival left no choice but to endure. Baldric burned with it. Darius had been the favorite to crack the inner sect rankings this year, strong enough for the outer sect's top 30. Yet he had fallen to Kaelin of the Verdant Vale 9th, beaten head-on by raw strength. "Kaelin, how did you know we were here?" Baldric spat. Darius wasn't stupid, the encounter wasn't chance, it was a detour. Someone had betrayed them. The others turned on Kaelin, hatred sharp for the traitor in their midst. Kaelin chuckled. "Kaelin told me." Darius smiled faintly. "Don't worry, I've already eliminated him. Consider it revenge." "Kaelin? Kaelin?" Baldric raged. Darius cursed. "I knew it was him. That heartless bastard. He's going to kill him, Kaelin." More than a dozen voices rose, blaming the betrayer for their wipeout. If they hadn't met Kaelin, they wouldn't be here. It was all his fault. "All right, leave now, goodbye." Kaelin smiled and crushed over a dozen jade tokens. Light swallowed the disciples, teleporting them away. Darius exhaled, glanced at the black longsword in his hand, and sheathed it. Having an arm is such a hassle. The battle had cost him. Old wounds still limited him. Otherwise he would have taken Baldric's Oramis hammer cleanly. "Need to reach the Flare Realm soon," he murmured to himself. Seclusion after this, push for the Flare Realm, limbs could be reborn there. Kaelin sat cross-legged, scanning the area. Clear, his divine sense slipped into the star chart. Darius didn't linger. He swallowed more than a dozen first-grade pills of his own refining, then withdrew his sense. Unlike an immortal cave, this place wasn't safe from danger. Still, the star chart held top-grade pills and countless rare spirit medicines. He closed his eyes, restoring spent spiritual energy. Half an hour later, a figure approached, slow, panting, exhausted. Lyriel. Kaelin opened his eyes and stood. "They're here." Lyriel nodded, scanning the battle signs. No one else. "He'd won still," she asked. "You won?" Kaelin nodded. "We won, over 10 eliminated, and Kaelin told me the location. So don't worry." Even prepared, Lyriel was taken aback. Darius had actually won. Senior brother Baldric, is he not here? "Eliminated by me too." Kaelin said it casually. Lyriel drew a slow breath, steadying herself. She needed to reassess. She'd given him the meeting point, but she hadn't believed he could take Baldric, first-level Flare Realm, great perfection starfall transformation, a hair from the second level. Kaelin looked toward the horizon, power nearly restored. He meant to hunt more targets. Lyriel's eyes lit. "Big brother Korith, are you looking for more people?" Kaelin nodded. Darius asked, "Do you know where they are? Anyone left nearby?" Lyriel shook her head, then hurried on. "I don't know where they've gone, but I know where they might go. We can ambush them." Kaelin's eyes sharpened with interest. The trap was sound and he liked it. "Tell me your plan." His face stayed calm, revealing nothing of his approval. Lyriel nodded. "The Secretum realm contains every environment, but the desert sees the least traffic. The climate is brutal, and there's nowhere to hide. Easiest place to become a target." Kaelin waited, finding her reasoning solid. In past elections, everyone instinctively avoids the desert. They flock to forests, water sources, anywhere with cover. She met his gaze. "Here's where we go. I'll act as bait, make noise in the open, draw them in. You stay in the shadows. Instead of hunting, let them come to you." Kaelin's interest deepened. Darius realized he'd underestimated this woman. He hadn't expected such cleverness. Better to attract victims than chase them. Darius studied her a moment longer, stroked his chin and nodded. Your plan works. I won't have you work for nothing. We split the tokens 80% to you, 20 to me. Agreed? Lyriel's face brightened instantly. She'd hoped for this but dared not suggest it before the terror. 20% sounded small, but with Kaylin's capabilities it could be substantial. Possibly enough for inner sect entry. Alone she'd be prey before she could take anything from anyone. She thanked him, genuinely grateful. Kaylin nodded, and they departed together. Outside the realm, a crowd stared at the viewing screen in silence. Kaylin had dispatched Baldric and over a dozen others with ease, stripping their Dernith pouches. The display left them speechless. Is this Kaylin of the Verdant Vale, 9th level? He defeated Baldric Flare Realm, 1st level, great perfection of Starfall transformation, and over a dozen opponents at 8th and 9th level Verdant Vale. Over a dozen pouches stolen again. Even the elders were impressed. They called him ruthless, not just strong but possessing the heart of a bandit. Was he a bandit in a past life? The remark came from Cedric. Tall and burly with sleeves rolled up. The atmosphere shifted. There was truth to it. Baldric and his group had been teleported out injured, each radiating fury, disqualified in less than a day by a 9th level Verdant Vale cultivator. The resentment was palpable. You scoundrel, Kaylin, I'll never let you get away with this. Baldric roared. The dozen disciples around him seethed with identical murderous intent, itching to find him and skin him alive. Even the deacons sent to treat their injuries were taken aback by the agitation. Kaylin, meanwhile, had left half an hour earlier to recuperate at his villa, unaware of the storm gathering. 2 hours later, inside the Secretum realm, dense forest, Lyriel ran alone through the undergrowth, tall and slender, creating deliberate chaos. She crashed through thickets, struck trees for noise and let out sweet, desperate cries. Help me! Save me! Is anyone there? Her performance drew every nearby Yerdan disciple. Even smaller alliances of a dozen plus turned toward the commotion. A woman! Sounds like she's being pursued. The pursuer can't be strong from all that noise. Let's wipe them out. A team of 15, led by a half-step Flare Realm expert, moved in. Kaylin led them. His followers had no objections. Others converged similarly. Lyriel had run less than a quarter hour when she'd attracted multiple groups, not a single pursuer behind her. She kept running, kept screaming, then over a dozen figures burst toward her. They spotted her first, probed her cultivation, 8th level Verdant Vale, and accelerated, eyes gleaming with greed. 3 points, junior sister. Were you crying for help? The leader's voice was gentle, but his eyes held avarice. His dozen followers mirrored him. Yes, me. Lyriel stopped, stepped back twice in fear. Little sister, who's robbing you? Tell me. The leader laughed, scanning behind her, empty. Darius wondered if their arrival had scared off the pursuer. Before Lyriel could answer, a man's voice came from behind the group. The person chasing her just now was me. Who goes there? The Irdan disciples froze, whirling as one. No sound had heralded the arrival behind them, only a figure in white robes, one sleeve hanging empty against the wind. Terror rippled across every face. Kaylin. Kaylin. The terror. My God. How can it be him? Darius was famous in the Yerdan sect now, whispered to have felled a Flare Realm deacon while still at the Verdant Vale. He glanced across the crowd, fingers brushing his chin, unhurried. The leader of the opposing group paled, realization crashing down. A trap. You lured us here. His face went ashen. Around him, expressions twisted. A bitter smile curved his own lips. That's right. The bait was mine. Now that you know it ends. He vanished. The dozen disciples on the far side gasped. Careful, someone shouted. Artifacts flared, stances locked, but the gap in power was a chasm. The clash lasted fewer than 10 breaths. Half fell instantly. The rest scattered, desperate, only to crumple moments later, unconscious in the dust. Darius had been ruthless, even by his own standards. Lyriel, watching from the fringe, stood dumbstruck. First time seeing him move. She had not expected such savagery. More than 10 Irdan disciples, a half-step Flare expert among them, and she had watched that expert take a fist to the gut, vomit blood, and drop. What kind of power was this? Darius moved through the fallen, stripping Dernith pouches, collecting tokens. He reappeared before her with a flicker, tossed 2 over. Your share. No mark on him. calm as breath. The division was crude, tokens unknown until pouches broke, but he cared nothing for fairness. Convenience robbed everyone in sight. Her presence had only accelerated the harvest. She turned the token over, dazed too, just like that. Darius studied her, head tilted. You're smart, you know we work well together, even if they don't realize it now. What happens when we leave? Aren't you afraid of retaliation? He couldn't place her. With Kaelin she had seemed fragile, vulnerable. When Kaelin fell, she betrayed Baldric's stronghold to follow Darius. Then she helped him set this very trap. A woman this sharp couldn't be blind to consequences. She paused, then chuckled low. I've thought about it. If few are robbed, nothing follows us out. But if many, she let the silence stretch. If it's enough to make me inner sect, I won't stay in the Irdan sect. Why borrow trouble? Darius looked again. Her logic was cold, clear, irrefutable. Inner sect disciples answered to no mere Irdan rabble. Failure was their problem, not hers. She had already priced the risk. You trust me that much? Not afraid I'll cut you loose once you've served your purpose? A half smile. She met his eyes, held them. You won't. If you do, I simply misjudged you. Darius had no answer. Admiration unbidden rose in him. She saw farther than he had, and she carried a gambler's nerve, familiar somehow. She was not what she seemed. Lightning figures materialized at the tree line. Voices drifted, faint. Is the hard part done? Likely, given the time. They exchanged a glance, crushed tokens in unison. Light swallowed the remaining Yurdan disciples, teleporting them away. Darius vanished after. Lyriel drew a breath, then screamed until her throat raw. Help someone, please save me! The same scenario repeated, but this time the man never finished his plea. Younger sister, who is pursuing you? Tell senior brother. A single strike knocked him unconscious. His companion fell just as silently. Kaelin stripped both storage pouches without a word. He wasn't in a hurry to give Lyriel her share. Their arrangement stood at 80-20. She didn't complain. From then on, they moved in perfect harmony. Outside, the watching disciples gaped. Even the sect masters, Lorcan and Caldric, stared in disbelief, the elders behind them equally stunned. Kaelin had actually set a trap with a woman to lure victims in. It was shameless. No one knew quite how to describe him. Beside Boran, Seraphina's expression darkened. On the light screen, Kaelin and Lyriel robbed another group with seamless teamwork. She stomped her foot in frustration. Inside the secret realm, their coordination only sharpened. In half an hour they'd looted the surrounding area for miles before moving on. Kaelin already held over 50 storage pouches, though he hadn't bothered checking his token points. Lyriel carried more than 10 tokens herself. Her score now at 23. 3 days passed in a blink. Kaelin couldn't hide his smile. He had so many pouches he hadn't had time to count them all. And Lyriel was beaming just as brightly. 3 days together had brought them much closer. Initially he'd been wary. He always felt this woman wasn't simple. But now she seemed genuinely decent. A strange feeling, hard to define. Just a feeling. Outside, disciples came and went. They didn't stay glued to the main hall. Some ate, some rested, but most remained fixed on the light screen. The 2 sect masters never left their posts, and an elder kept constant watch. By now the price of screen access had dropped by more than half, from over 5,000 spirit stones to around 1,000. The inner sect selection followed the same pattern every year. The fiercest competition came at the start. The weak were culled in droves within the first few days. The further it went, the stronger the survivors. And this year Kaelin drew the most attention. Not only was he incredibly strong, he set traps and shamelessly stole pouches. Paired with Lyriel, they were a perfect match. Only a handful saw through the ruse. Those who fell for it and were eliminated watched Lyriel's crocodile tears on the screen, then Kaelin's sudden strikes, and trembled. They dared not offend him, but they hated her intensely. When they learned Lyriel had a Dao companion in the outer sect named Kaelin, a mob went to collect interest up front. Besides Kaelin, few outer disciples remained active in the realm, alone or in groups. 3 major teams dominated. The first was an all-female unit led by Falora and Isolde, still over 10 strong. Falora had reached the 2nd level of Flare Realm. Isolde had quietly broken through to the 1st level before entering. The other 2 teams were mostly men, each with a Flare powerhouse. One team even boasted a 3rd-level Flare cultivator, the current token leader. Kaelin would have recognized him instantly. the man he'd seen beside Philora at the Sindral Pavilion. There seemed to be far fewer people here, Kaelin said as they reached a lakeside. 2 days ago we attracted crowds, now they're scattered. Normal, Lyriel laughed. Only a little over 5,000 entered. Besides us, others are hunting them too. After robbing in the forest, they committed dozens more heists near the water before resting here. Less than 4 days left, Kaelin muttered. Time was flying. Lyriel smiled at him. What? Not enough yet? Kaelin stayed silent, but she noticed. He seemed obsessed with storage pouches, preferring them over tokens. She was even a little envious. His current haul had to be near 400. Lyriel laughed, the sound bright against the damp air. Don't be so disappointed. The ones still standing are strong, which means their pouches are full of good stuff, right? Kaelin nodded. He knew the calculus. The higher the cultivation, the richer the spoils. He had over 800 tokens now. Lyriel held exactly 200. Together they commanded nearly a fifth of the assessment's total, and only a few dozen points separated him from the lead. Nothing left out here, he said, eyes tracking toward the Sacratum Realm's heart. Let's go deeper. Lyriel knew the pattern. Unless he'd already secured enough points, the smart play was to hole up and wait for the realm to close. Otherwise, the survivors would converge on the center in the final day's instinct and an unwritten understanding. They left the water. Their roles held, he melted into shadow. She walked open ground. Help. Her voice rang sweet and thin. A cluster of female cultivators nearby frowned, heads turning. Did you hear that? Sounds like a junior sister. Come on, let's save her. They rushed the sound. Help. Help. Lyriel kept calling, but the words died when more than a dozen figures materialized before her. All women, all radiating strength, the weakest at the 9th level of Verdant Veil. At the 4, Philora curves dangerous beneath her robes, face lovely and sharp. Beside her, Isolde, pale and cold as winter iron. Don't be afraid, junior sister, Philora said, appearing at Lyriel's side in a flash. She didn't scan for ambushes. At the 2nd level of Flare Realm, she didn't need to. Who bullied you? Kaelin, still cloaked in shadow, went rigid. He'd sensed a group of women, yes, but never Philora and Isolde. Lyriel's throat tightened. Philora's tone held no malice, but what could she say? This, she stammered. Kaelin sighed behind his veil. He hadn't wanted to show himself, not with Lyriel exposed. After days together, he couldn't gamble on whether Philora's cohort would simply rob her too. He stepped from the shadows. Every gaze snapped to him. Killing intent, cold and collective, washed over him, no less lethal for coming from women. You. It's you, Kaelin. It's actually him. I never expected. Even Philora and Isolde held back, eyes flat. Then Isolde spoke, voice light as a breeze stirring his hair. Kaelin, I never imagined that besides being a lecher, you also enjoy bullying women. A sharp crack split the air, a slap delivered from nowhere. You're a famous figure in the Yurdan sect, a voice spat. I never expected a despicable coward who preys on weak women. Kaelin, I never thought you were just like other men. The chorus swelled, unified in hatred, allowing no explanation. Philora's face darkened. She remembered him from Sindral Pavilion, where she'd offered guidance. I really misjudged you. I never thought you were this kind of person. You deserve to die. She stepped forward. The group roared murder. Isolde joined them. In heartbeats he was branded, despicable, shameless, vulgar, lecher, bully of women. The labels stuck like tar. Lyriel gaped. What had happened? Had he caused this much trouble the moment he showed his face? No, that's not. She tried, but Philora cut her off. Junior sister, don't be afraid. Leave the rest to us. Her gaze locked on Kaelin. Kaelin, prepare to die. Kaelin's frustration boiled into something sharper. How had he been branded a lecher again? What cosmic debt demanded this particular punishment? Philora moved first. Killing intent radiated from her as Flare Realm cultivation erupted, a longsword materializing in her grip. She slashed without warning. Kaelin could only stare. They were really attacking. He tapped his storage pouch, a jet-black longsword appearing to meet her strike. The impact drove him back 2 steps. Her aura was frightening, Verdant Veil level 2, yet carrying the weight of level 3. A genius who fought beyond her station. And she was a woman, which somehow made the strength more unsettling. Wait, it's a misunderstanding. He tried to speak, but she wouldn't listen. Felora's eyes widened mid-swing. When they'd first met, he'd been a nobody in the Yurdan sect. Days later his name rang through every hall, the disciple who'd defeated Steward Everhart and a Flare realm duo simultaneously. She doubted the rumors. Now she believed them, and the most shocking part, his cultivation sat only at the 9th level of Verdant Vale. Sisters, let's go. Her companions surged upward. Even Isolde, who had privately questioned her own judgment, joined the charge. Lyriel stood frozen below, stunned into silence. Had they just started fighting? She hadn't said a word yet. It's a misunderstanding, please stop fighting. Lyriel's voice finally cracked through the chaos. Kaelin breathed a fraction easier. Felora didn't slow. Don't be afraid, she called over the ring of steel. The Lecher will be crippled today. He nearly broke. A dozen women closed in, killing intent thick as fog, faces grim. Isolde's white longsword flashed among them, with only one functional arm surrounded, refusing to kill or use poison. He was purely reactive. Lyriel shouted again, louder. It's a misunderstanding really, please stop. The more she pleaded, the harder they swung. Kaelin's face grayed as he wove through the storm. The women were ruthless, their blades converging on a single anatomical target. Stars shifting kept him fluid, unpredictable, an eel slipping through net after net. Outside the secret realm, the watching disciples fell silent. They couldn't hear the words, but the image spoke volumes. One man against more than 10 female disciples. Felora, a dual flare realm wielder at the forefront. The ruthlessness left them awed. This Kaelin is amazing. Those senior sisters are terrifying. That last strike aimed straight for his. I swear, I'll never cross a woman again. The male disciples traded glances, goosebumps rising. The evaluation of Felora and her cohort climbed another rung. They weren't just strong, they were surgical. Vital points ignored, lower body targeted exclusively. The elders watched with the same grim understanding. This wasn't Kaelin's first scheme with Lyriel. Clearly he tried to rob them, and the fight was justified retribution. If he knew their thoughts, he would have wept. He hadn't intended a move. It was all a misunderstanding. But Felora's team didn't see it that way. Every slash carried castration intent. His expression darkened with each near miss. He could dodge, but what if he couldn't? Isolde's blade missed his manhood by a hair's breadth. Shadow shift saved him, but the margin was non-existent. Rage finally snapped the leash. Damn it! I already said it was a misunderstanding. Can't you just listen for a second? His aura surged. The black longsword drank the light. He slashed outward, releasing waves of ink-dark sword chi that crashed through the encirclement. Felora and Isolde led the desperate defense. In the opening, Kaelin flashed, reappearing beside Lyriel. She flinched. Then realization dawned. Before he could speak, she threw her hands up. Wait! Her voice rang sharp and clear. This is a misunderstanding. We're in cahoots. Lyriel hurried to explain, fearing another attack. Senior sisters, you've misunderstood. We're together. Felora, Isolde, and the others froze. Kaelin chimed in, exasperation sharpening his voice. That's right, we're in cahoots. Couldn't you have asked before you started swinging? I didn't say a word. Why the ambush? Felora raised an eyebrow. Then tell me what happened. Kaelin steadied himself and laid out the scheme he and Lyriel had devised. The women's expression shifted through a quicksilver sequence, outrage at the shamelessness of it, embarrassment at their own mistake, a flicker of grudging respect. Isolde stared at him, incredulous, unable to believe he would resort to such a treacherous trick. Felora said nothing, but color rose in her cheeks. She knew she had struck the wrong target. In truth, she found nothing objectionable in his methods. She rather liked his style. He had won on his own strength, and the ruse had merely drawn opponents to him, a negligible edge. She even regretted not meeting him sooner. If her own team employed such tactics, it would save no end of trouble. Kaelin had no desire to fight a group of women, especially over a misunderstanding. In a life-or-death struggle he would fear no one, but this was different. He had said his piece. If they still wanted blood, he would not be polite a second time. A silence stretched. Then Felora sighed and forced a smile. We misunderstood you, junior brother. Murmurs rippled through the group. He's not that kind of person. With their strength, catching a Verdant Vale Astral disciple wouldn't be this hard. Still, the scheme itself was vicious. The commentary left Kaelin speechless. Isolde stood apart, silent, her thoughts unreadable. Never mind, Kalen said. It's all right. I'll be going now. Goodbye. He turned to leave with Lyriel. Wait. He paused, glancing back. What is it? The Secretum realm is half spent, fewer than 1,000 remain, and soon everyone with points will converge on the center. Want to join us? Call it an alliance. Felora's laugh held genuine warmth. Kalen assessed the group. More than a dozen women, all competent. His gaze lingered on Isolde. She caught it and snorted, cold and wordless, though something reckless flickered across her face. He stroked his chin, considered, then nodded. Okay. Felora's face brightened. Welcome. His strength was undeniable. Even with one arm, his cultivation sat at Flare Realm 2nd level or higher, a massive asset in the Secretum. The final days would bring the hardest clashes. Felora's team had already crossed paths with other strong groups. Neither side had fought, both unwilling to suffer losses that would only benefit third parties. Once points were secured, the endgame would decide who claimed a place in the Marrow-Deep Cleansora pool shade, and the top 3 would earn entry to Shade Vale. Lyriel fell in beside Kalen, joining Felora's ranks. Most of the women regarded her with open disdain. She noticed and did not care. Her thoughts her own. At the head of the column, Kalen glanced sideways at Isolde. When did you reach Flare Realm? She glanced back, arrogance threading her voice. A while ago, he nodded. Then she added, Kalen, who cut off your arm? The question came from nowhere. He answered flatly. My brother, Isolde blinked. Heads turned. Kalen had no interest in elaborating. Who's the strongest player in the Secretum realm right now? When Kalen turned the conversation to serious matters, the cluster of women around him fell quiet, their attention sharpening. Felora's gaze held a solemn weight. Phoenix Jorath, Flare Realm, triple. Kalen blinked, caught off guard. He hadn't expected the Erdan sect to harbor a cultivator of that caliber. Long tenure in the Zareth Immortal sect had kept him isolated, but he knew the Erdan sect's hierarchy well enough. Flare Realm disciples were its apex, most stalled at level 1, a handful reaching level 2. A third level was unheard of. Darius, listening, felt the same disbelief. He had never heard of a third level in the Erdan sect. This Phoenix, Felora explained, was at the 2nd level until a few days before the Secretum realm opened. He broke through just in time to enter. Kalen nodded, filing that away. Darius's mind raced. He had expected to sweep the Secretum realm uncontested. A Flare realm triple complicated things. Whole, he wouldn't have flinched. One-armed, he couldn't unleash his full strength. Speaking of which, Darius said, You've met him. Kalen frowned. I have? Where? The 3rd floor of Syndral Pavilion. Besides you and me, the 3rd man there, that was Phoenix. Memory clicked into place. Darius had sensed a dangerous pressure from the man then, correctly pegging him for Flare Realm. So it was him, Kalen murmured. The breakthrough to 3rd level didn't surprise him. Right, Phoenix's team is the strongest in the Secretum realm now. He's almost certainly sitting on the most points. Felora's curiosity shifted. Little junior brother, you've been ambushing people for days. How many victory points have you collected? Kalen paused, calculating. Around 800, give or take. I haven't counted closely. 800. Felora's voice rose. The women around them turned, eyes wide. Darius kept his face neutral. 800, was that really so staggering? Isolde's lip curled. Kalen, despicable. She shook her head. Their own group had set traps and stolen barely 1,000 points combined. She didn't know about the storage pouches Kalen had also looted. The knowledge would only deepen her contempt. Kalen ignored her, turning to Felora. What about your group? How much did you take? Felora's cheeks colored. Not many, she sighed. We have more than 10 people, and the hall is barely better than the rest. Kalen frowned, unsure how to pass that. 800 wasn't nothing, but he had no benchmark. Total, we're just over 1,000, Felora admitted. Personally, I have a little over 400. The number startled Kalen so little until he did the math. Only 5,000 entrants meant a hard cap of 5,000 points total. How does your operation work? He asked. Darius had crushed every alliance he'd encountered. He'd never seen one function from the inside. We're spread through the inner domain, moving in parallel, Felora said. If someone spots an enemy, they signal. Whoever's closest converges. Kalen nodded, understanding. His gaze drifted to Lyriel at the rear of the procession. She caught it and smiled, slow and charming. Darius smiled back and looked away, impressed despite himself. He'd only mentioned his own 800, Lyriel held 200 more. If these women knew the pair had cleared 1,000 together, the silence would be deafening. Kaelin turned to Isolde. "And you? How many points?" She pouted. 250. He studied her a moment, then nodded once, saying nothing. The number felt right, auspicious even for her. They walked on toward the central zone. Other groups crossed their path, but neither Kaelin, Phelora, nor Isolde moved. The women trailing behind them swept up the stragglers. Their scores already placed them in the top 100. Small fry weren't worth the effort. Phelora, a Earden sect veteran, knew the Secretum realm's currents well. She had shared plenty along the way. "Besides you," Kaelin asked, "who else holds a dual flare realm?" The verdant veil posed no threat. Even a standard flare realm level 1 was negligible. He needed to know who beyond Phoenix could endanger him. Phelora considered. Lucian Orinel, Fenric Ciela, and Silas Everhart, those three publicly. Unless someone advanced in secret before entry, that's the list. Kaelin nodded, and the group kept walking. It was common practice to use the time before the inner sect selection to sharpen one's edge. The only direct threats were Phoenix, Lucian, Fenric, and Silas. Phoenix in particular, a triple flare realm cultivator, stood as the greatest danger of all. "You'd do well to watch yourself around Silas," Phelora said, smiling. "He's related to Steward Everhart, the one you injured." Kaelin paused, then nodded. They had been walking for 3 hours without noticing, Lyriel trailing in silence. Kaelin and Phelora led the group, Isolde at Kaelin's side. When darkness fell, Phelora called a halt. "We'll camp here. No need to rush." Everyone agreed and began setting up in the dense forest. Kaelin felt a quiet stirring of respect. This was what a captain did. He recalled his earlier arrangement with Sylvar and Dernick. They had deferred to him on everything, leaving him adrift. After that, he and Lyriel had simply partnered up, resting when tired. Now he realized how good it felt to have someone else steer. They lit a fire, despite the risk. Cultivators rarely bothered with warmth, but Phelora and the others were women, and with a man among them they wanted light. The full moon rose, casting dappled silver through the canopy, while the fire threw a bright circle into the gloom. Kaelin ate plain jerky from his storage pouch, his mind drifting to Vorin. 10 days since he had fled the Zareth immortal sect. 10 days since he had checked on his beast. He dismissed the worry. Vorin was a Yao beast he could endure. A normal animal survived a week without food. Vorin would be fine. Still, Kaelin felt a pang of guilt. If the beast had come with him, starvation would have been its greatest danger. The women ate well: fruit, dried meat, dry rations, all laid out with care. Even Isolde's pouch was generously stocked. Lyriel ate simply, only slightly better than Kaelin. He sat apart, watching them gather around the fire, talking and laughing like a genuine outing. Without Phelora, they would never be this relaxed. Isolde approached in her blue Eardan sect robe, the fabric outlining her figure. She was breathtaking, and she sat beside him without hesitation. Kaelin glanced at her, unsurprised. Their bond had deepened during the Ibon City mission, when she had intervened to save him after Zevron's humiliation. Her presence was the main reason he had agreed to join this group. "Kaelin, how did you lose your arm?" she asked, her voice cold. He sat up. "My brother chopped it off." "Your brother?" She had not known about Torin. "Why?" Kaelin hesitated. He would have refused anyone else, but something in him wanted to tell her. It felt like they were exchanging secrets. "Hatred." He told her the story. Torin's cruelty since childhood, the name good-for-nothing his brother had branded him with, the beating when Torin joined the Misty Immortal Palace, the forced marriage to Alara of the Veilers, sent to Dracona's house as a matrilocal son-in-law. He omitted the star charts. Isolde's expression shifted with each revelation. When he mentioned the marriage, disappointment flickered in her eyes, unnoticed even by her. Learning of Alara's veiled birthmark shocked her, pity stirred, and when he spoke of fleeing the sect under Torin's latest threats, a nameless anger flared in her chest. Emotions surged and receded in rapid succession, leaving her unsteady. She realized then that the Kaelin she had known was not the real one at all. "It seems I misunderstood you before." Kaelin blinked.
"You misunderstood me? You mean you called me Kaelin?"
Isolde nodded, lips pursed. Darius, Kaelin corrected himself, the old name slipping out, stared at her. Then stop calling me that. What was your mother thinking? Telling you the man staring at you is Kalen? He remembered asking before. She'd said her mother told her. He'd wondered then what kind of woman would teach a child such a thing. Isolde glanced at him. My mother said it was his mother who told her. Kalen fell silent. A family heirloom passed down through generations of misunderstanding. Asking had been pointless. An hour had slipped by. The other women kept their distance, even Philora and Lyriel, both prodigies of this year's cohort, rumored to have fought each other for first place in the final trial. Their silence wasn't surprising. Gradually, Isolde stopped speaking, settling quietly to the side. Kalen said nothing either, a faint smile on his face. He realized he'd changed. The old Kalen never confided in anyone. Not about the Korath family, not about his years as a matrilical son-in-law. Those were sore spots, weaknesses, but since defeating Taurin, he'd found he could release those pains. They were simply part of his story now. He didn't know this was the sublimation Boren had spoken of in Iron Peak City. Let go, put the past behind you. The mind shifts, life becomes less exhausting. Not a bad feeling, he murmured, a relaxed laugh escaping. Isolde, standing nearby, started. What did you say? Nothing, nothing, he waved a hand. She studied him, then rose and left. Kalen watched her go. Terrible temper for someone so pretty. He lay back, gaze finding the full moon. Lyriel approached a short while later. Senior brother Korath, she trailed off, taking Isolde's vacated seat, eyes fixed on him. Lately, that was how she addressed him. Kalen didn't turn. What's wrong? Days of working together had erased barriers between them. What's your relationship with Isolde? Why ask about her? Lyriel asked. Curiosity tugged Kalen upright. Nothing, just asking. She shook her head too quickly, color rising. He studied her with open skepticism. Strange woman. She'd had a Dao companion before, Kalen himself. Unless memory failed when he'd abandoned her and run, she'd looked heartbroken, then she'd said she wanted to come with him. Now this. Kalen felt a headache building. Friends, she saved my life. Simple truth. Lyriel might be suspicious, but she wouldn't harm him. Saved you? She blinked, leaning forward with more questions. Careful. He moved without thought, shouting, lunging, snatching her close with one arm, vanishing from their spot. A thunderous crash. Heartbeats later, a fireball detonated where they'd been sitting. A massive crater yawned open, ringed by raging flames that licked outward a dozen meters. Enemy attack. Watch out. Philora's voice cut through the shock. The female disciples scrambled, artifacts drawn, battle ready. Kalen landed 30 meters up in a tall tree. Lyriel still in his arm. His eyes were cold, burning. The attacker had waited in shadows for a moment of distraction. If Kalen hadn't reacted instantly, the strike wouldn't have been fatal, but serious injury was certain. Lyriel's breath quickened against his chest, face flaming, yet no fear showed in her eyes. He set her down. All right? She shook her head quickly. Fine. He didn't catch the shift in her expression, already frowning. He turned, a black longsword materializing in his grip. Come out. Sneak attacking and too cowardly to show yourself. Philora tracked his gaze. The other women followed. Killing intent sharpened Isolde's eyes. A figure stepped from the trees, chuckling. Didn't expect you to dodge all that. You're good. More than 20 figures melted from the shadows behind him. Kalen's jaw tightened. Silas. Philora's expression was grave. His voice cold. Silas, a powerful expert at the second level of the Flare realm. Kalen stared at the man before him. Silas wore a blue robe, long black hair framing a slender, handsome figure. You are Silas?
Good.
A faint smile curved Silas's lips. I didn't expect you could dodge my attack just now with only one arm. Silas showed no sign of panic. Why did you ambush me? Kalen's right hand clenched, genuine anger in his voice. Ambush you? Silas shook his head with a bitter smile, speaking calmly. Back then you also ambushed my second uncle. Your second uncle? Kalen raised an eyebrow. Stuart Everhart? Silas nodded, a sinister smile spreading across his face. That's right. You hurt someone from the Everhart family. Do you think things will end so easily? Kalen spat out a mouthful of water. The reason for the incident crystallizing. Behind Silas stood more than 20 Erdan's sect disciples of the Verdant Veil at the 8th and 9th levels, all in blue robes, including 6 powerful members of the half-step Flare realm. On Kalen's side, only a dozen or so people alone, Kaelin could escape temporarily, none of them could catch him. But he was with Phalora, Isolde, their group, and Lyriel. Kaelin looked at Silas and said calmly, "If you want revenge, then come on." Silas shook his head with a wry smile, ignoring him to address Phalora and the others. "Junior Sister Phalora, today's matter is a personal grudge between Kaelin and me. I don't want to involve you. Withdraw now, and we won't take action against you. How about it?" Phalora raised an eyebrow. "You want us to give up on Kaelin?" "That's right." Silas nodded. Phalora's cultivation was Flare Realm Level 2, comparable to his own. Moreover, the other side had more than a dozen female disciples, each quite powerful. Silas didn't want a head-on fight. "You want me to abandon my companions? Impossible." Phalora took a step forward, his aura surging. Kaelin gave him a deep look, silently remembering this kindness. Isolde didn't speak, but a white longsword had already appeared in his hand. The female disciples behind them wore complicated expressions. Silas smiled, ignoring Phalora to address the women behind him. "Junior sisters, I don't think you have anything to do with Kaelin. Are you really planning to fight to the death with us here? Is it worth it for Kaelin? We're here to participate in the inner sect selection and ultimately become inner sect disciples. Are you willing to give that up for Kaelin? Besides, look at the numbers. Do you really think your dozen or so can stop us?" The female disciples who had remained silent showed even more complicated expressions. In truth, they were well aware of these things. Fighting for Kaelin and Silas, was it worth it? Of course it wasn't. They weren't familiar with Kaelin. Most were meeting him for the first time. Was it worth it to fight against a group for his sake, even if they lost their qualification and were eliminated? It definitely wasn't. Kaelin also turned his gaze to the group of women. Silas didn't speak, just watched silently, expression calm, neither happy nor sad. Lyriel did the same, calmly looking in their direction without saying a word. Upon hearing this, Phalora turned and glanced at the female disciples. A look of disappointment flashed in his eyes. Their reaction was obvious. They were unwilling to fight for Kaelin. Or rather, among this group, only Phalora and Isolde were willing to stand up for him. Including the two of them plus Kaelin, could they defeat more than 20 people on the other side, including a second-level flare expert? It would be difficult. Silas smiled and continued. "Dear junior sisters, how about this? I'll make a promise to you all here. If you choose to withdraw from the upcoming battle now, I guarantee that I and my companions will not attack you in the next few days. How about that? You should know that this will greatly increase your chances of surviving the 7 days, and you might even become an inner sect disciple." His words were clearly intended to sow discord. However, these people all knew the stakes. Yet they were deeply attracted to the offer, because the conditions were too tempting. More than a dozen female disciples lowered their heads and remained silent. A hint of disappointment flashed in Phalora's eyes. He turned and said, "If you're unwilling to help, that's fine too. From this moment on, I'm leaving the team." Everyone around was stunned. "Senior Sister Phalora, don't talk nonsense. How could you leave?" "Exactly, Senior Sister Phalora. Are you really going to fight for Kaelin? We don't know him well. This is only our first meeting." Senior Sister Phalora, a group of female disciples began to dissuade him. Silas smiled coldly and didn't rush to speak. This was exactly the effect he wanted. Killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Isolde's eyes were cold and sharp, but he remained silent. "Senior Sister Phalora, you don't need to do this." Kaelin spoke from his perch high in the tree. Darius, watching from the opposing line, had not expected Phalora to declare she would leave the alliance over him. This was only their second meeting, a temporary arrangement at best. Yet she was willing to walk away. Even Lyriel, standing beside Darius, glanced at Phalora repeatedly, admiration bright in her eyes. Phalora turned and smiled at Kaelin. "Brother Korith, you're an ally I brought in. Now that you're in trouble, I cannot back down, even if I lose my chance it costs me the inner sect. What does it matter?" She laughed freely. A spirit as fierce as any man's warmth rose in Kaelin's chest. He nodded, saying nothing more. "Senior Sister Caraway, are you really going against Silas for Kaelin's sake?" Another female disciple finally broke the silence. Phalora gave her a long look, her smile turning bitter. "It's not that I want to oppose him, he wants to oppose us. My mind is made up. If you're willing to stay and fight alongside me, then stay. If not, I won't force you." She didn't want to explain, the words tasted bitter regardless. They had formed this alliance themselves upon entering the secretum realm, and the partnership had been harmonious. In every prior engagement, she had handled the strongest enemies. She had shared the bulk of her tokens with her companions. Without her, the group might have been wiped out by now. Isolde, unsurprisingly, remained at Kaelin's side. The other female disciples bowed their heads in silence, offering no reply. Their silence was answer enough. "All right, I understand you can leave now." Disappointment shadowed Felora's eyes, though she forced a smile. "I'm sorry, Senior Sister Caraway." The first disciple bowed, hands clasped, and turned away. "Take care, Senior Sister Caraway." Senior Sister Caraway. One by one, the dozen disciples retreated, withdrawing from the battlefield. They did not flee far. Silas had already sworn he would not harm them. They settled in a safe hollow to watch. Isolde did not leave. He stood beside Felora. She smiled at him, and he inclined his head slightly. Felora knew Isolde stayed not for her, but for Kaelin. Even if she walked away, he would remain. Together they turned to face Silas. "Have you made your decision? No regrets?" A smile curved Silas's lips, handsome but cold. "Isn't that what you meant to divide us?" Felora raised an eyebrow, a long sword materializing in her hand as her aura surged. "Shameless scoundrel." Isolde gripped his own blade, frowning at Silas. Silas glanced at him, unbothered. "I didn't want to be your enemy, but if you insist on helping Kaelin, don't blame me." Silas's face contorted. The Everhart family was powerful, yet it fell short of the Blackthorns. Every genius training at the Zareth Immortal sect carried the blood of a great clan. "Enough nonsense, let's fight." Felora's killing intent spiked. Kaelin glanced at Lyriel, but before he could speak, she said, "Senior Brother Korith, no matter what happens, I'm on your side." Kaelin shook his head, a wry smile touching his mouth. "That's not what I meant. If a fight breaks out, you find a place to hide." Lyriel nodded in agreement. Gripping a jet-black longsword, Kaelin flashed to stand beside Isolde and Felora. All three gazes locked on Silas. "Senior Sister Caraway, Isolde." "Thank you. I told you we're allies." Felora curled her lip. Isolde snorted. "Kaelin." The use of his given name should have grated. Instead, Kaelin felt a surge of camaraderie. "Enough words. Let's begin." Kaelin laughed, battle intent blazing. Silas sneered from across the clearing. He had more than 20 disciples at his back, enough to wear Kaelin's trio down to nothing. The men behind him wore cold, eager smiles. Kaelin's name was known throughout the Yrden sect. Now the prospect of toppling him here excited them, especially the older disciples who had long resented a newcomer stealing the sect's spotlight. "Since that's the case, all three of you may die together." Silas's eyes iced over, a long spear manifesting in his grip. "Attack!" More than 20 male disciples surged forward at once. Kaelin did not retreat. He leveled his jet-black longsword at the oncoming spearman, and the 20-odd disciples fanning out behind him, then glanced at the two women beside him. "Senior sisters, hold him for a moment. The rest are mine." Isolde and Felora stared. Stunned, he was already moving. Silas bore down with killing intent, spear aimed to avenge the Everhart clan. But Kaelin ignored him entirely, plunging into the mass of male disciples. Silas faltered, then found Isolde and Felora intercepting his path. Felora stood at the early second level of the flare realm, Isolde at the early first. Silas, at the middle second, outclassed Felora alone. But against both he deadlocked. However fiercely he thrust, he could not shake them. "Damn you, think you can stop me?" His eyes glazed with cold fury as the spear lashed out again and again. "Enough talk," Felora sneered. Isolde said nothing, but her longsword was no less lethal. Outside the secretum realm, every eye fixed on the light screen. Since Kaelin had allied with Felora, Isolde and the others, observers had watched closely. Many had sighed at his apparent luck, falling into a world of women's fragrance, and gaining a powerhouse like Felora, only to see the situation reverse in a heartbeat. "Silas, isn't he Steward Everhart's nephew here for revenge?" Knowledgeable disciples murmured. "I've heard the same. Same clan, same surname." Darius came prepared, with numbers. "The alliance just formed, and already everyone's fled except those two." Kaldor stood among the crowd, surrounded by this year's Yrdan entrants. Hyven and the others Kaelin had helped in the arena. Their faces darkened on the screen. "They abandoned Big Brother Korith," Haven said, indignation sharp. The rest echoed her. Silas picked the fight. They ran scared. Big brother Korith. Genuine respect and worry laced their voices. Seraphina, beside Boran, felt the same dread watching her brother-in-law outnumbered. Then her gaze landed on Isolde and Falora, and her expression shifted. Bad brother-in-law, she muttered. Mirel's flirting with 2 vixens. Neither would marry her. Is she really that bad? Inside, Kaelin knew none of it. Killing intent radiated from him as he crashed into the enemy ranks without restraint. Over 20 opponents, weakest 8th level of the Verdant Vale, 6 of them. Miravel at the 9th, Raventh at half-step flare. Kaelin sneered. Until we reach flare, I'll cut down however many come. The mob flinched, feeling dismissed. Arrogant. Kill him, ruthless, every strike lethal. Most had been hired by Steward Everhart, promised rich rewards for Kaelin's head. Murder was legal in the Secretum realm. Even so, Kaelin dared not be careless against 20+ attackers at once. His black blade drank the night, ink dark and gleaming. In under 5 breaths, 2 men fell. The onlookers froze. No one had expected Kaelin to be so ruthless, cutting down 2 cultivators in a single breath. Charge, everyone, charge. The shout ripped through the stunned silence. Darius glanced across the field, his black longsword humming, eyes cold. You're asking for it, don't blame me. Killing intent surged from him in a palpable wave, dropping the temperature until frost bit at exposed skin. He moved like lightning. The combined assault of more than 20 Verdant Vale 8th and 9th level cultivators would have given a Flare Realm 3rd level pause. But Kaelin stood at only Verdant Vale 9th, not yet half-step Flare. They had underestimated him. At 8th level he had already matched a Flare Realm 2nd. Before entering Iron Peak City he had broken through to 9th. His benchmark had been Tauren, a genius who could challenge higher realms and had taken a blood-burning pill, combat power equivalent to a Flare Realm quadruple. Kaelin had defeated him. That victory proved his peak strength touched the quadruple threshold. He had paid for it with an arm, and old wounds still dragged at him, but he was hardly helpless. Darius had never truly committed since entering the Secretum realm. Silas had struck first from ambush, then rallied the others to surround and attack from behind. Their intent was clear. They wanted his life, acting on Everhart family orders. Kaelin would not hold back. The fighting was savage. He met flashing blades with his right hand alone. His white robe soaked crimson. His face twisted into something feral. The numerical advantage that should have been decisive collapsed under a single man. Silas, locked in combat with Isolde and Falora, watched with shock and fury. Darius cursed, eyes bloodshot, desperate to break free and join the kill. Half the force he had brought already lay scattered in pieces across the ground. Kaelin moved like a demon. Surrounded, he slipped through death with shadow shift, then struck. Darius cut down so many the survivors trembled, feeling they faced not a man but a god of death. Isn't he Verdant Vale 9th? And he lost an arm? Voices cracked. How is he this strong? In a heartbeat, 20-odd attackers dwindled to fewer than 10. Kaelin stood dripping, one-armed black sword raised, and charged again. Damn it, fight or we all die here. The remainder threw themselves forward with everything they had, trading blows in desperation. They miscalculated, let them see who was more ruthless. Kaelin had never feared anyone. Darius had clawed his prominence in Iron Peak City through sheer brutality, surviving this long by answering every slash with a stab. He roared for the kill, voice echoing, body radiating murder. Outside the secret realm, every Erdan sect and utility disciple stood dumbfounded. Swallowed breaths sounded everywhere. Too ruthless, they whispered. This Kaelin over 20 Erdan disciples, and he nearly wiped them all. Even Kaldor's group, initially anxious for Kaelin, now felt their worry had been wasted. There was no need to fear the terror. Condolences should flow the other way. The 2 sect masters remained silent, but the elders' faces cycled through expressions. Dravik, holder of the Enlightenment Seed, said nothing. The uninformed voices rose, addressing Lorcan and Kaldric. This boy carries too much bloodlust. He went too far. No restraint at all. Those opponents are Zareth Immortal Sect disciples, truly ruthless. If such a disciple entered the inner sect, it might not be a blessing for the Zareth Immortal Sect. The sect masters ignored them entirely. In a corner beyond the main hall, Steward Everhart's face had gone ash-grey. He stared at the light screen, disbelief freezing him in place as Kalen slaughtered the elite force the Everhart family had sent to kill him. The plan had collapsed in the space of a heartbeat. Inside the Secretum realm, Kalen had gone berserk. Wounds scored his body, blood streaming freely, yet he ignored them entirely. He had endured far worse, these were nothing. Cold eyes fixed on the 4 opponents still standing across from him, right hand clamped around a long black blade. Of the 20-odd attackers, only these 4 remained. The rest lay dead or maimed in the dirt. This time he would kill. In previous trips to the Secretum realm he had only ever stolen Dernith pouches, never taken a life. Those disciples of the Zereth immortal sect held no grudge against him and he refused to slaughter innocents. But the group before him now was different, they had come for his head. No matter their numbers, he would cut them all down. Damn it, one muttered, face ashen. How can he be this strong? How do we fight this? They glanced towards Silas, but he was locked in combat with Isolde and Felora. Silas had tried several times to break free, only to be blocked by the 2 women. His eyes were bloodshot, aura surging as he roared hoarsely. Damn it, you all have to die! It was only a roar. Neither Felora nor Isolde yielded an inch. Kalen glanced coldly at the quartet, gaze calm as if viewing corpses. They exchanged a look, terror written plain, yet gritted their teeth and charged. Flight was pointless before such strength, only death awaited. His peak strength was formidable enough to challenge higher realms. More terrifying still was his martial arts skill. Stars shifting granted unparalleled speed among peers, along with shadow shift for ambush and escape. In a blink, several more corpses hit the ground, over 20 bodies now pooled in blood. Kalen's expression was ferocious. He did not rush for Dernith pouches or tokens. Instead, he turned slowly, black eyes locking onto Silas, still battling the 2 women. Under that stare, Silas felt targeted by a prehistoric beast. A chill raced down his spine. Felora and Isolde were overjoyed. They had never expected Kalen to dispatch 20+ Irdan sect disciples so easily. Even Kalen had fallen in under 15 minutes against Silas in their previous encounter. Felora questioned whether she could replicate the feat, and a lingering fear took root. When they had attacked Kalen earlier, he had clearly held back. Otherwise they might share the fate of the dead. Kill! Kalen roared, jet black longsword raised, charging Silas with naked killing intent. Damn it. Silas's face blanched. He had been supremely confident killing Kalen was supposed to be a certainty. Reality had proven otherwise. More shocking still, Kalen had single-handedly slaughtered over 20 Irdan sect disciples. Even at the 2nd level of the Flare realm, Silas could not have done it. The sword descended at his skull with blinding speed. Silas gritted his teeth, parrying the 2 women's attacks first, then thrusting his spear at the incoming threat. As Kalen closed, a burning sensation washed over him. A terrifying aura radiated not from Silas, but from the spear itself. The weapon blazed like flame, piercing toward his chest. A profound rank high-grade magical artifact from the Everhart family treasury. Silas had brought it for 2 reasons, to kill Kalen and avenge his clan, and to dominate the Velora energy selection. He had not activated it against Isolde and Felora. Profound rank artifacts drained spiritual energy heavily, and even as a flare jewel cultivator, he had waited for the killing blow. His men's lives were irrelevant. Go to hell. Just as Silas believed the strike would end it, Kalen vanished from sight. What? Silas's pupils contracted. His spear skewered empty air. A burst of flames erupted from the tip, hitting nothing. For a heartbeat he could not comprehend. Then Kalen materialized beside him, black blade already at his throat. Shock froze Silas's face. Disbelief. He tried to react, to flee, too late. A head arced skyward. The body stood motionless a moment longer, then collapsed. One move, Silas was dead. Everyone who witnessed it reeled. No one imagined such ruthlessness, killing without a blink. But more importantly, every viewer before the light screens realized the same question: what was Kalen's movement technique? He had used shadow shift multiple times in the Secretum realm, yet everyone assumed it was merely exceptional speed and skill. Silas was no weakling. Such speed should have been impossible. The killing blow especially defied explanation. How had he done it? The disciples would not stop talking. Irdan sect and utility disciples alike circled the scene, voices overlapping in disbelief. They had overlooked him before, but the movement technique he had just displayed defied comprehension. Kaelin had killed Silas of the Everhearts in a single breath. The terror of it rippled past the disciples to the elders, and even the sect masters, Caldric and Lorcan, wore faint surprise. Kaelin didn't disappear, Lorcan said, voice low. His cultivation pierced illusion at a glance, yet what he saw strained belief. He accelerated instantly. Caldric nodded. He borrowed stars shifting from the Yurdan sect. Lorcan turned sharply. Stars shifting? A silent nod. That manual is severely incomplete. I've studied it. It lacks any spell cultivator framework. Lorcan's brow furrowed. Caldric smiled without speaking. He had seen the boy penetrate the technique when he defeated Steward Everheart. Beside him, Lorcan's eyes widened as realization struck. The enlightenment seed. The seed embodied enlightenment itself, understanding realization. They had only heard of it, never witnessed it, and knew only its benefits to Faelith and artifact refining. Now they saw what else it could do. They attributed everything to the seed, never considering alternatives, inventing excuses for him. If Kaelin had heard their reasoning, he would have laughed and shouted praise. Sect Master is wise. The elders behind them exchanged glances. Several sharp-eyed veterans recognized the technique from ancient texts, the legendary shadow shift, a heaven-rank art degraded to earth, rank only by its incompleteness. Greed stirred in more than one chest. Even profound core cultivators would risk death for a heaven-rank cultivation method. Outside the main hall, clamor erupted. Caldor and the others cheered, clapping until their palms stung. Steward Everheart lurked in shadow, face ashen. He had never imagined the family genius would fall to a single sword stroke. It's over. It's over. The steward slumped through his actions. A genius had died. He had made a fatal mistake. Through the light screen he watched Kaelin examine the Everheart's prized Lyrandel-tipped Hastail with open satisfaction. Blood sprayed from the steward's mouth, a loss of both wife and army. Inside the Secretum realm, Kaelin had defeated over 20 opponents and carried several bloody marks, but they meant nothing. He had taken a medicinal pilvora to stabilize himself, discarded the stained robe, and pulled a clean white one from his Dernith pouch. Elara had prepared everything before his departure. He studied the spear, satisfaction deepening. The Solare Hastail in his pouch was nearly broken. This would replace it handsomely. Not bad, not bad. His smile widened. Felora laughed beside him. No ordinary weapon, at minimum profound rank medium grade, possibly high grade. Kaelin nodded. Isolde remained silent. He stowed the spear. Neither woman objected. The killer claimed the spoils, and since the weapon belonged to the Everhearts, taking it invited trouble, but he had already bloodied that well beyond repair. He stripped the Dernith pouch from Silas's corpse, inspected it, and grinned. Over 3,000 spirit stones alone. The Everhearts live up to their reputation as a wealthy clan, he murmured, then laughed. Come on, let's divide the spoils. Isolde and Felora stared, dividing spoils. They had not known he and Kaelin. He had been collecting storage pouches along with tokens throughout the Secretum realm. Lyriel arrived at a run. Kaelin smiled at the two women's confusion, said nothing and vanished. He reappeared among the 20-odd cultivators he had defeated earlier, now dead or dying. 3 still breathed, broken and immobile, unable even to crush their tokens. Kaelin looked down, killing intent radiating from him. They looked up, terror bare in their eyes. Kaelin, you crushed the token, we yield. Kaelin, don't kill me. Kaelin, we lost. This is a competition. The sect master and elders are watching. Lost? His sneer cut the air. If I lay there, would you let me go because I lost? Silence. A cold glint flashed. Desperate pleas rose too late. His longsword swept down, beheading them in a single motion, no mercy. The witnesses stood frozen, stunned by a ruthlessness that exceeded imagination. Kaelin gathered the storage pouches from the 20-odd corpses and piled them together. Severed limbs littered the ground, and Isolde and Felora's faces tightened. Both were cultivators long accustomed to death, yet neither had ever killed with such cold efficiency. Between them, their lifetime tallies fell short of what Kaelin had achieved in a single afternoon. Lyriel said nothing. Her expression was calmer than the others, but her eyes held something brighter than unease, admiration, undisguised. The killing intent that had radiated from him evaporated. He was simply Kaelin again, crouching in the dirt. He waved the women over, and they approached to watch him upend the pouches. Spirit stones, bottles, artifacts, and tokens clattered across the earth in a glittering heap. Aside from Silas, every corpse had belonged to an enemy, cultivators bribed by the Everhard family to ambush him. The haul was substantial. Kaelin's eyes lit with satisfaction. Even Isolde, usually so composed, swallowed hard. Philora and Lyriel stared, equally transfixed. The dozen female disciples who had fled earlier had not gone far. They had lingered in the tree line, hidden in shadow, and witnessed everything. None had imagined Kaelin capable of such ruthlessness, of cutting down every threat alone. Regret settled thick in their throats, but the Secretum realm offered no safety for the weak. After a hurried conference, they chose to return. Senior Sister Philora, this is yours. Kaelin set aside 10 jade pendants, a disciple token, over 8,000 spirit stones, and a mountain of pill bottles, jars, and artifacts. Philora's voice came thin, so much, her hands trembled as she stared at the pile. This was her first time dividing plunder from dead men's pouches. She had meant to refuse, the words died in her throat. Thank you. You're welcome, Isolde. These are yours. 10 jade pendants, 10 disciple tokens, 7,000 spirit stones, and a heavier share of medicinal pills and artifacts. Fewer stones, but the pills alone would sell for 10,000 more. Isolde's mask of detachment flickered. She wanted to decline with cool grace, but her mouth formed only a soft, stunned "oh." The remainder, roughly 2,000 spirit stones, assorted pills and artifacts, and 4 tokens went to Lyriel. She blinked. I have one too? Kaelin smiled and nodded. Lyriel accepted at once, beaming. All 3 women stood stunned by the sudden windfall. The returned disciples watched from the periphery, dumbfounded, their eyes bright with envy and a deeper, sharper regret. Isolde frowned, counting. You gave everything to us. What about yourself? Philora and Lyriel looked over. Junior brother Kaelin, you gave us all your things. Philora flushed with embarrassment. Lyriel, who had done nothing to earn a share, hurried forward. Senior brother Kaelin, I don't want them. Please take them back. Kaelin waved a hand, laughing. Keep it. I've already gained plenty. Besides, didn't I take that spear? I really like it. They protested several times. His attitude was firm. They had not abandoned him in his crisis, and he believed they deserved this. In the end, they accepted, understanding the gratitude beneath his insistence. The returned disciples felt the weight of their choice more keenly now. Even Lyriel, who had hidden in the shadows without truly leaving, would have received a share. What then had their flight cost them? The 3 women crushed their jade pendants. Numbers rose. Joy bloomed across their faces. Isolde and Philora already held enough points for the top 100. Now the top 10 beckoned. Lyriel was the most surprised. She had carried only 200 tokens. Now her winning points surged to 500. She stared at Kaelin, astonished. He turned back with a smile and a slight nod. Something moved in her chest, deep and quiet. Isolde and Philora had contributed the most, so the largest shares were natural. Had Lyriel received equal portions, resentment might have stirred. She was weak, only at the verdant veil, and earning points would only grow harder. So Kaelin had given her Silas's jade pendant, which undoubtedly held the highest score. It was the greatest help he could offer. Lyriel understood all of this without a word, keeping it in her heart. The faces of the group beamed with joy. Philora and Isolde, dividing spoils for the first time, were particularly excited. Murder and robbery make you rich fast, Philora said, laughing heartily. I didn't believe it before, but I didn't expect it to be true. Her personality was outgoing, fiery, passionate. Isolde had once despised murder and robbery. Now she felt a strange excitement, wanted to do it a few more times. Lyriel, needless to say, had spent days with Kaelin and knew how many people he had tricked. She had only received tokens then, not as satisfying as soulforged fragment stones. A dozen female disciples stood 20 meters from the 4 men. The men knew about Kaelin, but none paid attention to the women, nor wanted to. Kaelin felt neither joy nor sorrow toward them. At 19 he had experienced far too much. He felt only slight disappointment at their abandonment, not even sadness. Lyriel hadn't spent much time with them, only found them heartless. But that wasn't a big deal. Isolde didn't glance at the group. Cold and aloof on the surface. Her heart was not like that at all, as shown when Kaelin was in danger before Zevron. She was actually sentimental, loyal. The most heartbroken was Philora. Most of these people had been recruited by her. They were fine most of the time, but in crucial moments, the men clearly had no intention of acknowledging the women. The female disciples understood. They exchanged glances, gritted their teeth, and walked forward with flushed faces. Senior Sister Philora, we were wrong. We were just too scared, one said. Junior Brother Kalen, we were just scared, that's why. Another said, we're too weak. Staying here would only be a burden, wouldn't it? A third said. Junior Sister, please help me persuade them. Another pleaded. Silence fell. The women spoke, eyes brimming with tears as they looked at the four men. Kalen sneered and shook his head without speaking. Isolde's face grew colder. She ignored them as well. Philora's eyes filled with disappointment. She shook her head and smiled bitterly. No need to say anything more. We were no longer comrades when you left just now. People who abandon their comrades at crucial moments are not trustworthy. But Senior Sister Philora, another disciple tried. Philora replied coldly, we are no longer companions. Haven't I made myself clear enough? Her words startled everyone. Philora had a fiery temper but was always kind to her own. They had never seen her like this. Out of consideration for our past as comrades, I will not harm you within the secretum realm, so you'd better watch yourselves from now on. Philora spat out a mouthful of starfall. The women stood stunned. For a moment, Kalen didn't know what to do. Darius glanced at Philora, sensing her emotions, then turned his gaze to the female disciples and asked coldly, aren't you leaving? Senior Sister Philora said she wouldn't touch you, but I never said that. The women were immediately horrified. They had seen clearly how ruthless Kalen was. Darius had single-handedly slaughtered over 20 Yerdan sect disciples, even killing Silas, a Flare Realm dual-level powerhouse. The group clasped their hands in a fist salute to Philora, then fled at top speed. From now on in the secretum realm they would have to rely on themselves. Whether they could ultimately become inner sect disciples depended on themselves. Kalen glanced at Philora, whose eyes showed even greater disappointment. With a formidable enemy at hand, he felt a sense of loss, but no time to dwell on it. Senior Sister Philora, don't overthink it, Kalen offered. Some people and some things can only be understood and seen clearly after experiencing them. Philora looked up at him. Isolde didn't speak, just seemed lost in thought. Lyriel smiled at Philora. Senior Sister Philora, if you're with them. It'll be even more dangerous if they betray you when we encounter danger. It's better this way. Philora took a deep breath, exhaled, nodded heavily, smiled, and returned to her original state. The three women collected their respective stolen goods. Let's go, let's find somewhere else to rest, Kalen said, laughing. The three had no objections, so they left together. In the outside world, a group of Irdan sect disciples and utility disciples were filled with extremely complex thoughts. Did you see that? That spirit stone just now, one said, and those medicinal pills. Magical artifacts. They cried out in awe. We're rich, they exclaimed. This Kalen didn't keep a single penny for himself and gave it all away. Who said that? Didn't he take Silas's spear? Silence fell. The fact that Kalen divided the spoils caused a huge sensation among all disciples who witnessed it. They had never seen anything like it. A mountain of spirit stones, various magical artifacts, bottles and jars of medicinal pills, split up just like that. Envy was one aspect, but even more it made them look at Kalen with new respect. They thought him very generous. Even the elders were the same. Several who had previously criticized Kalen for being too bloodthirsty had changed their tune. Although this boy is bloodthirsty, he is grateful for kindness, which is a good thing, one said. Cherishing feelings, knowing how to be grateful, another said. They could all see Kalen's intention in dividing the spoils. This changed their opinion of him considerably, and they also had a high opinion of Philora and Isolde. Similarly, the elder who was in the know also remained silent. The more sentimental Kalen was, the better it served the Zereth sect. A man like that would never betray them if treated well, and he would contribute enormously. Inside the realm, 1 man and 3 women rested through the night. By morning all 4 had fully recovered, even Kalen, despite the wounds still mapping his body. Darius had slipped into the star chart under cover of darkness and swallowed a cache of his own medicinal pills alongside a hoard of spirit medicine and spiritual plants. His concoctions were all of the highest grade, though some proved less effective than simply taking advanced pills. The spiritual plants worked. Their tokens now held enough winning points. For them, the remainder of the trial was simply a matter of finding a safe place to wait for the realm to close. They would enter the inner door steadily, with no need to compete further. But Kalen and his companions were hungry for the top 10 of the Marrow-Deep Cleansora Poolshade. All 4 intended to keep plundering points. Darius proposed a split, 3 parts each for himself, Isolde and Felora, 1 part for Lyriel. The 3 women nodded in agreement. Lyriel was essentially a background figure, her strength pitifully weak. Simply making the top rank was already an achievement. The group moved toward the central area, eyes peeled for Yerdan disciples. Any they encountered would be relieved of their storage pouches. Half a day passed in this fashion. They robbed 3 more groups, 16 disciples in total. Yet the combined wealth was pitiful, less than Silas had carried alone. The scene left disciples outside the circle in awe. Many felt that being defeated and eliminated was not so terrible. The true nightmare was crossing paths with Kalen, because their storage pouches would be taken all over again. Losing the election was heartbreaking enough. But to lose everything on top of it? It wasn't just 1 or 2 who thought this. Most shared the sentiment. Even many onlookers, including those with Verdant Veil and Nimbus disciple accounts, secretly rejoiced. They felt that not participating in the inner sect selection had been the right decision. Who could blame them, given the terror of the process? They no longer cared about Face, or the elders and sect masters watching from the sidelines. They didn't care about anything. Even Discriminant began analyzing and pondering. In the 4 days since Kalen entered the realm, how many storage pouches and spirit stones had he stolen? When the final estimate reached approximately 400,000 spirit stones, it stunned the Irdan disciples. A few days ago he had robbed Baldric's group of more than 10 pouches. Later, when he took Lyriel along, all those pouches went with him. Darius couldn't even remember how many people he'd robbed afterward. 400,000 spirit stones was an astonishing figure, and that didn't include the identity jade tokens he'd stolen. If contribution points could also be redeemed, no one could guess the final total. It was terrifying. Leaving aside the Flare realm, only a profound core expert would likely possess 400,000 spirit stones. If the Xeris sect ultimately didn't intervene and let Kalen's group leave with their haul, wouldn't he be worth as much as a profound core expert, and he was only at the Verdant Veil. At the same time, the way people outside looked at Isolde and Felora through the light screen changed. It was one thing for Lyriel and Kalen to have colluded in wrongdoing. Now even the pure and innocent Blackthorn Fairy, the fiery and passionate goddess Felora, had started robbing and looting alongside him. The male disciples were speechless, unable to name the feeling in their hearts. Kalen, inside the realm, was completely unaware of all this. Robbing alongside the 3 women felt incredibly exhilarating. Felora's cultivation sat at Flare level 2, Isolde's at level 1. As a team, the 4 of them could almost sweep through the realm, even facing Phoenix, who possessed triple Flare cultivation. The group showed no fear. Working together, even if they couldn't win, self-preservation was definitely not a problem. If Kalen hadn't lost an arm, and if his internal injuries from fighting Taurin had fully healed, he could have handled Phoenix himself. However, just as the 4 were happily committing robbery, they bumped into a group of male cultivators. Both sides went on high alert. The opposing team numbered over 20, each with formidable strength. The lowest cultivation was Verdant Veil, level 9, with 7 at half-step Flare and 3 at Flare level 1. Upon seeing the leader, a look of seriousness flashed across Felora's eyes as she called out Lucian's name. Lucian was one of the remaining 2 Flare disciples. His gaze also sharpened as he called out Felora and Kalen's names. Darius dared not underestimate Felora. She also possessed Flare level 2 strength. Kalen's name was now known throughout the Yerdan sect, having defeated Steward Silas, a duo from the Flare realm. Although Lucian had reached Flare level 2, he dared not underestimate his opponent. Add a Flare level 1 in Isolde. As for Lyriel, she was essentially a freebie. Lucian didn't even glance at her. However, what gave him confidence was his numbers: 3 at Flare level 1, 7 at half-step Flare, and himself at Flare double middle stage. Kalen was also taken aback, not because of Lucian, but because he spotted an old acquaintance in the crowd and cried out Mirabelle's name. Mirabelle spotted Kalen and Isolde. Darius froze. He hadn't expected to run into them here. A tangle of emotions rose in his chest. He had once stood up for Merrick and made trouble for Kalen, only to suffer a crushing defeat in a later competition and public humiliation. As for Isolde, Mirabelle had once tried to form an alliance with her, only to be flatly rejected. Darius never imagined the two would be together, and from the looks of it, they were in cahoots. Kaelin, Isolde. His expression was complicated, the feeling in his heart impossible to describe. At the front of the group, Lucian glanced back. Darius recognized him as a fellow Irdan sect disciple from this year's cohort. Darius chuckled. So we all know each other. Kaelin turned to look at Lucian. His attention had been on Mirabelle, wondering how she had ended up with this group. Lucian was not tall. His skin slightly dark, features rugged, unattractive when neutral, worse when he smiled. Lucian, are you going to make a move? Felora raised an eyebrow. The opponent was strong, but they were not afraid. After all, Kaelin was on their side. Without overwhelming combat power to suppress him, his ghostly movements would force any lower cultivation opponent to their knees. As long as Kaelin had enough spiritual power, the shifting stars gave him speed beyond his peers. Darius was invincible unless someone could suppress him in raw strength, otherwise, a low-level cultivator wouldn't fear numbers. Being surrounded was just a matter of shadow shifting for Kaelin. Lucian glanced at Felora, then at Kaelin, a grotesque smile spread across his face. A few days ago, I definitely wouldn't have made enemies of you. Even with 4 of you, I wouldn't have wanted to provoke you. But there are less than 3 days left until the Secretum realm closes. Far fewer people remain, and I not only want a top 10 spot, I want to go further. It's about my position in the Marrow-Deep Cleansora poolshade, and if I'm lucky I might even get the Solvorn Pilvora. His meaning was clear, they had to fight. The chance to enter the Marrow-Deep Cleansora poolshade was rare. The top 10 in the inner sect selection all qualified, but positions differed, the higher the ranking. The closer to the Shade Veil, the greater the benefits. Let's get started. Felora's longsword appeared in her hand. Isolde did the same, a silver-white blade materializing in her grip. The two had already prepared. Kaelin glanced at Lyriel beside him. She instantly understood, nodded, and retreated to hide. 3 against a group. 1 Flare Realm, 2, 3 at Flare Realm 1, 7 at Half-Step Flare, and over a dozen Verdant Veil level 9 powerhouses. Eldemir Vera's extremely strong lineup. Yet Kaelin showed no fear. On the contrary, he seemed somewhat excited. Senior Sister Caraway, can you handle Lucian? Kaelin asked, eyes gleaming. This was a big ticket. Isolde and Felora thought the same. This was a big fish they couldn't let escape. Unbeknownst to them, their personalities had been influenced by Kaelin. Felora nodded. Don't worry. Kaelin looked at Isolde. Those 3 at Flare Realm 1, how many can you take down? She was very strong, able to challenge higher levels. Back when she was at Verdant Veil 9th, her strength already surpassed Half-Step Flare. Now that she had reached the first level, she was undoubtedly stronger. Isolde gave him a disapproving look. If we fight with all our might, we can handle the 3 of them in a short time. Felora didn't know exactly how strong she was, but Kaelin, who had fought her, certainly did. She looked at Isolde with surprise. She hadn't expected this girl to be so strong. Taking on 3 cultivators of the same rank right from the start. Kaelin laughed. How about this, you take 2, I'll handle the rest. Isolde pursed her lips and said nothing. Felora nodded. Kaelin's fighting ability was formidable. The 3 spoke openly, making no secret of their plans. But when Lucian, Mirabelle, and the others overheard, their expressions grew increasingly grim. Did they look down on people that much? Especially Isolde's claim she could take on 3. The 3 Flare Realm 1 disciples on the opposing side instantly seethed with killing intent. Lucian's eyes turned cold. This was a disgrace. A deep sense of shame. In the crowd, Mirabelle quietly took 2 steps back. Darius had personally experienced just how terrifying Kaelin was. Back then, even with a higher realm, he had suffered a great loss. Kaelin was currently at Verdant Veil 9th level middle stage, while Darius had only reached Starfall 9th level early stage. Kaelin was even further ahead. Darius believed Kaelin wouldn't even need a second move against him. For a moment, Mirabelle wanted to turn and run, but with Lucian and the others present, the Flare Realm 2 expert remained silent. He dared not speak. Darius had no choice but to grit his teeth and bear it. You all deserve to die, Lucian roared, his dark face twisting with fury, making him look even uglier. Kill! Darius roared, and everyone behind him echoed. With so many people, so many strong individuals, how could they not defeat 3 opponents? Were they kidding? Without further ado, Kaelin and his 2 companions charged forward, following their earlier discussion. Felora and Lucian engaged at once. Lucian's fury was plain, yet he held nothing back in caution. Darius produced a quarren axe from his storage pouch, the massive weapon radiating killing intent alongside its wielder. The axe head alone had to weigh 1,000 pounds, and paired with Lucian's dark skin and fierce features, the impression was striking. When Felora's longsword met the axe, she staggered back several steps, wrist numbed, face flushing. The power behind the blow exceeded her expectations. But she was no pushover, a recognized genius of the Yerdan sect, and the disadvantage proved temporary. She soon answered with a cascade of flexible attacks, turning defense into a flowing offense. Isolde faced 2 Flare Realm disciples of the Yerdan sect. Her stunning beauty drew no mercy. Her earlier provocations had been too cutting. She had begun with 3 opponents, though only 2 remained standing before her. Meanwhile, Kaelin charged straight into the mass of disciples. 20-odd cultivators ringed him like a turtle in a jar. The strongest among them, a first-level Flare Realm practitioner, slapped his storage pouch, drew a machete, and shouted the charge. Together, take him down. Kaelin's reputation preceded him, a true prodigy known for challenging higher realms. Anger hadn't addled their wits. No one dared carelessness. They moved as one, committing everything. Yet within a few exchanges, several disciples were cut down and sent flying. Kaelin moved through them like a tiger unleashed, baleful energy rolling off him in waves. Same-level cultivators couldn't withstand a single exchange. Half-step Flare Realm fighters barely survived too. The first-level expert fared worst of all. First to rush forward, he took a kick to the stomach that displaced organs, reversed blood flow, and forced a mouthful of blood. Nearly killed in a single strike. For all their strength, the group lacked the will to die for this cause, and Kaelin routed them alone in short order. Mirabelle didn't dare move. Darius trembled, fingers tightening on his withdrawal token, ready to crush it and flee if the tide turned. Lucian, locked in combat with Felora, and the 2 disciples facing Isolde all blanched. Kaelin had single-handedly wiped out the rest? What manner of strength was this? The Verdant Veil had only 9 levels. Could it truly produce this? Lucian's axe strikes were powerful but clumsy. Felora dodged each with practiced ease. Kaelin's displayed strength was terrifying. Lucian knew he had to intervene, or it would be too late. The 2 fighting Isolde shared the thought, but couldn't act on it. Her strength was equally absurd. Though only at the first level of Flare Realm, she fought with terrifying skill. Cyan flame clung to her longsword, emitting a bluish-green light without heat, yet striking with bone-chilling cold. They were completely suppressed. Across all 3 battles, Kaelin dominated, absolutely. Numbers meant nothing against him. Lyriel, watching from the shadows, observed with keen interest, almost tempted to pull an apple from her storage pouch and eat while the spectacle unfolded. Kaelin didn't kill anyone this time, only injuring them enough to end their fight. Both sides were Zerith Immortal Sect disciples. There was no true enmity, and they hadn't been targeting him. No reason to take lives. Outside, Eardan and utility disciples reacted with far more calm. They weren't surprised he'd felled so many, on the contrary. They'd expected it. Anyone who's faced Kaelin before, no matter how strong, suffered greatly. Silas even lost his life. Lucian's in trouble. Fortunately, he didn't intend to kill, only injured, not dead. Thank goodness, though I'd guess their storage pouches are gone. Just surviving him is a feat. You still care about a storage pouch? From the moment they clashed, the onlookers hadn't worried about Kaelin's group. They'd worried about Lucian. Despite superior numbers and strength, it wasn't enough. Kaelin and his companions were terrifying. Especially Kaelin alone, who could dominate the opposing team single-handedly. They estimated that inside the Secretum realm, besides Phoenix at the 3rd level of Flare Realm, no one could rival him. The elders and both sect masters agreed. Kaelin was very strong, terrifyingly so. And this with only 1 arm. They didn't know about his old injuries. Otherwise he'd be even more terrifying.